You arrive in medieval Europe the way most people arrive anywhere in history, confused, slightly underdressed, and hoping someone nearby speaks a language you've at least heard of on Netflix. A cool morning fog stretches across the uneven cobblestone street beneath your feet, and you feel the weight of the air damp, smoky, and carrying just a hint of yesterday's questionable fish. Your ears catch the muted clatter of wooden wheels from somewhere down the lane, mixed with the distant bleating of sheep who, frankly, sound like they're already having a better morning than you. You take a slow breath, feeling the cold settle in your chest, and it's at that exact moment you realize something important. You are absolutely not ready for this century. In fact, you probably won't make it through this day. Still, we'll try our best. A soft breeze slides through the narrow street, brushing the edges of your cloak, or whatever approximation of time traveler chic you happened to bring. The sky overhead is a pale, washed-out blue, the kind that looks like it hasn't quite decided if it's going to commit to daytime or just sulk. Lanterns in a few doorways still glow faintly, their flames trembling, and people, real, medieval people, shuffle past you without a second glance. The medieval world is many things, but polite curiosity about strangers is not one of them. You hear someone hawking bread nearby, though the tone suggests the bread may not exactly be fresh. A woman carrying a basket of herbs brushes by you, muttering something under her breath that could be a greeting or a warning. Honestly, either is possible. Historians still debate whether everyday street conversations here were friendly or closer to a constant low-level argument punctuated by goats. Speaking of goats, one wanders into your path, stops, stares, and chews in a way that feels vaguely judgmental. You suppose this is fair. Even in the 14th century, you've already made eye contact with a goat before another human, which feels like a strong indication of how the day might go. You step around it carefully, because that's one of the first things you should know about staying alive in medieval Europe. Goats have social power. Not legal power, of course, but notable influence. Enough to ruin the hem of your cloak or your reputation, depending on their mood. A cart rattles past, pulled by a horse whose expression suggests it hasn't slept since the Crusades. The driver shouts something unintelligible at you, possibly a warning, possibly a complaint, possibly just the medieval equivalent of move. You obey, because medieval roads do not offer you the luxury of ego. You step closer to the nearest building, its timber frame leaning at an angle that suggests it has been negotiating with gravity for decades. You look up the street, watching the morning unfold in slow, practical movements. Medieval Europe wakes early, mostly because people go to bed early, mostly because there is no electricity, and also because half the town's chores require the sun. A rooster crows somewhere. Another rooster answers back with half the enthusiasm. You catch the smell of fresh and not-so-fresh hay drifting out from a nearby stable. A farmer begins unloading sacks of grain, each one heavy enough to crush a modern gym influencer. A historical fact worth gently placing here, right as the world settles around you. Most medieval towns had no more than a few thousand people. This place, with its close, winding streets and wooden homes leaning like gossiping neighbors, reflects that. It feels intimate, lived in, and surprisingly quiet except for the livestock commentary. At the same time, you sense a low-level hum of activity behind doors, under awnings, and deep inside the marketplace ahead. You take a few steps forward, your boots pressing into damp earth where the cobblestones fade. The air smells like a mix of cool morning air and a suspicious warmth that you're pretty sure comes from the tanner's workshop somewhere nearby. Medieval tanning, you'll be relieved to know, is a smell you won't forget even if you return home. Nor will your friends let you forget it. You try to blend in as best you can, though your posture probably still screams tourist from the future. A man passing by gives you a quick glance, and you feel an immediate, irrational need to justify yourself to him. You don't, though. That's growth. A small detail worth noting: your boots feel wrong. Modern feet aren't used to uneven stone and dirt in the same stride, and you feel it in your ankles almost instantly. You adjust your steps. You try to walk like someone who belongs here, even though the goat from earlier definitely knows you don't. The marketplace comes into view, a cluster of wooden stalls covered with cloth awnings in shades that might once have been colors, but now look mostly like medieval beige. People gather around baskets of onions, wheels of cheese, bolts of wool, and oddly shaped tools whose function you choose not to question. You overhear someone discussing the weather with the same seriousness modern people reserve for taxes. The obscure tidbit of this section arrives now, subtle and uninvited. In this era, onions were valuable enough to be used as rent, medicine, or a wedding gift. Yes, you could have proposed with onions. The bar for romance was lower, but the breath consequences were higher. You pause at the edge of the market, letting the scene wash over you, the voices, the footsteps, the smell of bread warming on a makeshift oven, the distant clang of a blacksmith shaping iron with a rhythm that echoes through the morning. The sound is almost soothing, like a very loud, very warm lullaby. A man calls out the price of apples. A child chases a chicken with the determined wobble of someone who takes personal offense at poultry. A dog wanders through it all, sniffing with purpose, as though performing an important civic duty. And through all this, you feel yourself settling into the atmosphere, the textures, the strange comfort of being in a world where everything is rough around the edges but still deeply alive. You feel present. You feel curious. You feel slightly hungry. Before the journey continues too far, there's one small, gentle reminder, a soft voice in your ear, as warm as candlelight at the end of a long day. If you're enjoying this sleepy stroll through time, you can like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And if you're awake enough, tell me your location and your local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Now take one last calming breath as the morning warms around you. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You step deeper into the market, letting the slow rhythm of medieval life fold around you like a heavy wool cloak. The morning haze is lifting, revealing beams of soft sunlight slipping through the crooked rooftops. And for a moment the scene feels almost peaceful, right up until someone nearly runs you over with a basket of turnips. You shuffle aside, and the turnip carrier doesn't apologize, because apologies are considered optional luxuries in this century, like soap that actually works. You keep moving. The ground beneath you shifts from uneven dirt to another patchwork of stones, each one determined to test your ankle flexibility. You steady yourself, and in doing so, you accidentally make eye contact with the woman selling vegetables. She stares at you with a narrow, analytical gaze, the kind someone usually reserves for suspicious mushrooms. You look away quickly, because one of the unspoken rules of staying alive here is simple. Avoid unnecessary interpersonal adventures. You pass a row of vendors, a man selling wool dyed in muted reds and greens, a woman offering small bundles of dried lavender, another man with 3 fish arranged in a way that implies the rest of his stock sold hours ago. You keep your hands close to your sides. You've learned enough already to know that touching anything in a medieval market without permission is a reliable way to trigger the kind of conflict you are not equipped for, especially with your modern conflict resolution skills, which involve talking it out and customer service tone. As you walk, you remember a key historical fact that floats gently into your mind like a feather landing on rough wool. Most medieval clothing was made of wool not because people loved scratchy textures, but because sheep were everywhere and linen was expensive. You glance around and confirm this. Almost every cloak, tunic, and hood you see carries that familiar thick, slightly coarse look. You touch the fabric of someone's sleeve without thinking, and the person turns toward you so fast you nearly forget what century you're in. Nice wool, you blurt without meaning to. The man stares exactly 1 second too long for comfort, then huffs and turns back to his conversation. You silently vow never to touch anything again. The deeper you wander, the more you start to notice the subtle layers of the medieval soundscape. There's the constant chatter of barter people speaking quickly, crisply, sometimes with the faint edge of negotiation turned argument. There's the creak of wagon wheels, the scrape of wooden crates being shifted, and the repetitive clang of a blacksmith shaping horseshoes at the far end of the square. If you listen closely, there's even the faint hum of a tune someone nearby is singing under their breath, a melody soft and repetitive, something like a working song. And the smells, oh, the smells, half comforting, half deeply concerning. Fresh bread mingles with dried herbs and warm hay. But then, just to keep your senses humble, an unidentifiable odor sneaks in from behind a butcher stall, where something hangs from a hook that looks like it's seen better centuries. You try to breathe through your mouth discreetly, pretending you're simply enjoying the crisp morning air like a normal local person. A nearby dog, however, seems fully committed to investigating the butcher's stall, leaving you in an awkward moment where you and the dog share the same location and the same confusion. You wander toward a quieter corner of the market, drawn by the sight of a small open-air table with parchment rolls, quills, and little pots of ink. A scribe, thin, hunched, and dressed in layers that suggest he hasn't been warm since childhood, sits there beside his work. His ink-stained fingers move carefully over a sheet as he copies lines of text in a soft, deliberate rhythm. You watch him for a moment, fascinated, because writing in medieval Europe is not just a skill, it's a superpower. Only about 10% of people could read and write, and scribes were often hired to record transactions, letters, or legal agreements. You admire the concentration on his face, the gentle curve of the letters forming with such slow, careful strokes. You're so drawn in that you fail to notice someone walking up behind you until they speak, waiting for him to write you something. You turn. A young man, big shoulders, plain tunic, hair that looks like it was cut with a knife someone was already using for something else, studies you with curiosity. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just curiosity. You shrug lightly. Just watching. He nods. Not many do. This feels like a safe answer. So you nod too. The medieval equivalent of nice weather we're having. The young man squints at you. Where are you from? This is the question you absolutely hoped no one would ask. Your brain scrambles. You can't say the future, because that's a fast track to being labelled either a heretic or someone who needs significantly more onions in their diet. You think fast. Far, you say. Very far. He laughs. Aren't we all? This is your first victory of the day. You breathe again. As the man walks off, the scribe glances up, eyes sharp and surprisingly alert. Be careful, he says softly, with answers like that. You blink. Why? He doesn't respond immediately. He dips his quill, finishes the stroke of a letter, then speaks in a low voice. People talk, and people listen, and people assume. He lifts a brow at you, the universal expression for you should know this already. Before you can respond, he adds something even more cryptic. Historians still debate how seriously medieval towns took strangers, but I wouldn't test the theory today. You nod, because you suddenly don't trust your voice. The scribe returns to his writing, as though your accidental brush with social danger is just part of the usual morning ambience. You take a respectful step back from the table and decide that blending in is officially your number one priority. You consider your clothing, your posture, your general aura of person who does not belong here. You try adjusting all three subtly, the way someone might adjust their Wi-Fi router, hoping it magically improves the connection. You lower your shoulders, soften your gaze, tuck your hands into your sleeves, and adopt a slow gait you hope reads as comfortable medieval citizen instead of panicked tourist in time. As you move through the market again, you catch a strange sight, a vendor with a basket full of ceramic jugs, each one with a tiny carved face on it. The faces are round, smiling, and slightly creepy in a friendly way. You don't recognize their purpose. This is the obscure tidbit of the section, arriving right on schedule. In some towns, people carved faces onto drinking jugs for luck, protection, or simply because life needed more whimsy. No one fully agrees why, which is charming, in its way. You leave the jugs behind, letting the market hum around you once more. The breeze carries conversations you don't fully understand, and the sun warms the tops of the wooden stalls. You pass the wool seller again, this time without touching him, and the fish vendor, and the onion merchant, whose stall you give a wide berth because onions here seem to carry genuine social authority. Remember the goat from earlier? It's back. It wanders across your path as if it's supervising your progress, and when it bleats, you swear you hear subtle judgment in the tone. You nod at it politely because, honestly, what else can you do? Respect the local influences. Then, with the market behind you and the day properly underway, you continue walking deeper into the town, where new challenges and possibly fresher smells await. The journey into medieval survival has just begun. You leave the market behind, stepping into a quieter part of town where the houses lean even closer together, their upper floors nearly touching, like they're whispering secrets over the street below. The air changes here, less crowded, less chaotic, but still carrying a faint perfume of wood smoke, wet earth, and something that might be cabbage. You breathe in slowly, accepting that medieval Europe is very committed to cabbage as both a scent and a lifestyle. Your stomach rumbles, because apparently time travel does not exempt you from the need for breakfast. Unfortunately, breakfast in this era is not exactly the fluffy, syrup-drenched event you might be used to. Medieval mornings usually begin with something simple. Coarse, dark bread, maybe a weak ale or watered wine, possibly cheese if it's been a good week. You can forget pancakes entirely. Those won't exist in a recognizable form for centuries, which feels like a personal attack. You pass a doorway where a woman is slicing yesterday's bread with a small iron knife. The loaf is dense, truly dense, the kind of bread that doubles as both food and self-defense tool. She dunks the slices into a pot of warm broth, softening them just enough to make chewing a realistic possibility. You catch the smell, earthy and comforting, and it's only then you realize your modern jaw isn't trained for medieval bread combat. You'll need the broth too, if you want to keep your teeth. A historical fact settles into place gently. Bread was the foundation of most medieval diets, especially among common folk, not the golden-crusted artisanal kind, but something closer to edible brick. It filled the stomach, lasted days without spoiling, and didn't require complicated tools to make. Essentially, it was the medieval version of a reliable roommate, always present. Not always exciting, occasionally questionable. As you watch the woman prepare her breakfast, she glances your way, not suspicious, just curious. The soft, morning kind of curiosity that doesn't demand a conversation. You nod politely, and she returns the nod before going back to her bread-dunking ritual. You stand there for a moment, wondering if you could politely ask for a piece, but no, you remind yourself. Strangers here do not beg for food. They trade, barter, or marry into bread access. You keep walking. The quiet street slopes gently downward, leading you to a modest courtyard where a few townsfolk have gathered around a communal well. The well sits atop a circular stone base, its wooden frame holding a rope that looks both sturdy and like it's seen generations of hands. A young boy cranks the wheel, pulling up a bucket of cold, fresh water. The sound of the rope creaking is soft, rhythmic, hypnotic, even a little soothing. A group of women talk among themselves as they wait their turn. Their clothing is simple. Linen shifts under wool gowns, aprons tied neatly, hair covered with cloth caps that frame their faces. You watch as one of them dips a ladle into the bucket and takes a drink, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand in a gesture that feels timeless. It's here, observing the well, that you catch the day's obscure cultural tidbit. In some medieval towns, wells were considered communal gathering spots, not just for water, but for news. People shared gossip here, the way modern people share group chats. If you wanted to know who got married, who owed taxes, who accidentally set their barn on fire again, this was the place to hear it. You glance around, letting the soft morning murmur wash over you, when suddenly the boy cranking the rope stops and looks up at you with the candid intensity only children can manage. "You're new," he says, matter of fact, with the tone of someone pointing out that the sky is blue. You panic internally. Children, of all medieval creatures, are the greatest detectors of something is off. Before you can respond, an older woman next to him speaks. "Leave the traveller be," she says gently, not unkindly. Then she offers you a small smile, a rare gift in a century where smiling too much can make people suspicious. "You're far from home, aren't you?" she asks. You consider your words carefully. You've learned that vague answers are your best chance at survival. "I am," you say. "That's all right," she replies, as if you've confessed to something very human. People pass through. The boy squints at you. You talk funny. This, unfortunately, is true. Whatever dialect is spoken here is a distant ancestor of anything you'd recognize. You try to soften your vowels and slow your speech, hoping to sound like someone whose hometown is just somewhere else. You nod again, giving the universal gesture for yes, and let us end this conversation while I'm still ahead. The woman seems satisfied with your presence and returns to drawing her water. The boy continues to stare for a moment longer, then loses interest, distracted by a dog trotting past the courtyard with the air of a creature on a very important mission. You move on, relieved. A narrow alley leads you toward the outskirts. of the town, where the houses become fewer and the fields more visible. Here, a light breeze sweeps through the open space, carrying the soft, sweet scent of early herbs growing along the fence lines. You pause to take it in. For a moment, it feels peaceful enough that you almost forget you're wildly out of your depth. Almost. A man carrying a basket of eggs walks past you. The eggs wobble precariously, and you instinctively reach out as though to help steady them. He reacts faster than you expect, stepping back sharply, shielding the basket like it contains the crown jewels. Only then do you remember, eggs are valuable. Like, really valuable. They're fragile riches in a world without reliable supply chains. You withdraw your hands, smiling awkwardly. The man grunts, adjusting his grip, and mutters something about outsiders with quick hands. You decide not to take it personally. This leads you into today's moment of scholarly uncertainty, delivered with the gentle shrug of someone who has read many conflicting books. Historians still debate how often medieval people distrusted strangers versus simply ignoring them. Some accounts imply wariness, others suggest casual acceptance. The truth, as always, likely shifts from town to town just like this one. You keep walking until a small wooden bench comes into view beside a field where sheep graze lazily in the sun. You sit, letting the warmth settle across your shoulders. The sheep glance over at you with calm indifference, probably the friendliest reaction you've gotten all morning. The sun lifts higher, warming the rooftops, softening the outlines of the fields, and turning the air just bright enough to make everything look a little more welcoming. You take another breath, feeling the rhythm of the town slow your own heartbeat. For a moment, you feel almost at home. Then a thought crosses your mind, one that's both comforting and troubling. If this is just morning, the rest of the day is going to be interesting. At least you've made it past breakfast alive. That's something. Somewhere behind you, a familiar bleat echoes across the field. The goat is back, and it is absolutely judging you again. You rise from the bench as the sun warms the edge of the field, brushing off your cloak like someone trying to act normal after being observed again by a goat. The town stretches out before you in a slow, uneven sprawl. Cottages tucked into each other like mismatched puzzle pieces, workshops with low doors, and a few small gardens bounded by crooked fences that seem to defy standard geometry. Medieval Europe is not big on straight lines, but it is exceptionally committed to personality. You re-enter the town through a narrow passage, where sunlight drips like honey between the crooked beams above. A few townsfolk pass you, and you give polite nods, careful, slow, non-threatening nods. You're trying to respect medieval manners, which are charmingly inconsistent. There are rules, yes, but many of them are unwritten, unspoken, and occasionally invented on the spot. The first rule becomes clear quickly: don't stare. Staring at someone for too long is the medieval equivalent of challenging them to emotional combat. So you practice the glance and look away technique, which makes you feel like a shy bird watcher. As you navigate the street, you pass a man sweeping his doorway with the kind of intensity usually reserved for major religious events. You offer a quiet hello, but he barely acknowledges you. No surprise there, greetings aren't guaranteed here. Not out of rudeness, but because most people spend their emotional currency on survival rather than small talk. Still, you walk with purpose, or at least with the illusion of purpose. This is important. Medieval towns are suspicious of wanderers who meander. A person walking confidently has a destination. A person drifting around aimlessly, that's someone who might steal your chickens or ask too many questions. And you, unfortunately, fit the drifter profile perfectly. A little girl hurries past you, carrying a bucket nearly half her size. She glances over her shoulder at you, expression curious but not frightened. Children seem to detect stranger easily, but also seem less concerned by it, probably because they've seen worse things, like a chicken stealing someone's dinner or an adult tripping over a loose plank. You turn a corner and find yourself near a cluster of workshops, the working heart of the town. The smells here shift dramatically. Hot metal from a smithy, warm yeast drifting from a baker's door, and something sharp and herbal from the apothecary. You inhale carefully, hoping none of it is hazardous. Medieval air quality regulations are non-existent. You pass the blacksmith's forge, where sparks leap like tiny fireflies every time the hammer strikes the anvil. The sound rings out in the crisp morning air, steady, rhythmic, almost musical. The blacksmith, strong-armed and broad-shouldered, doesn't look up as you pass, but you're grateful for his focus. This is not a man whose attention you casually seek. You pause to observe, letting the steady beat of metal on metal soothe you. There's something timeless about the way he works, shaping iron into horseshoes and tools with the same movements used by generations before him. A gentle historical fact floats in. Blacksmiths were essential to almost every medieval community. Their work touching everything: farming, building, cooking, travel. Without them, the entire town would limp, clatter, or collapse. You move on, stepping carefully around a woodworker, shaping planks with a hand plane. He glances at you once quick, assessing, then nods, as though granting you temporary permission to exist in his proximity. This feels like an achievement. A woman nearby tends a row of dye vats in shades of muted red and deep blue. She stirs one vat with a long wooden pole, steam rising around her in soft curls. The scent is earthy and sharp, and you catch glimpses of wool hung to dry on lines behind her. She hums a soft tune as she works, a repetitive melody that sounds both ancient and strangely calming. You pause, not wanting to interrupt her concentration, but she notices you anyway. "Mind the edge," she says, gesturing toward a puddle of dyed water that could easily ruin your boots and your day. You thank her, stepping away from the splash zone. "Strange cloak," she adds casually, eyeing your outfit. You resist the urge to explain that your cloak is a mass-produced synthetic blend from the future. Instead, you offer a vague, time-safe answer. "It's from far away." She nods. "Ah, travelers always bring odd threads. This is medieval for, your clothes look weird, but I'm polite enough not to make it a thing." You smile, relieved, and keep walking. Another rule of medieval manners becomes apparent. Don't interrupt work. People here take their tasks seriously, and idle chit-chat is considered a luxury for evenings or festivals, not for weekday mornings, when productivity determines whether you eat tonight. You tuck that reminder into your mental survival guide. As you walk away from the dye workshop, you pass a man mending a fence, humming softly to himself. He pauses to wipe sweat from his brow, and then returns to tightening a wooden peg with a tool that looks older than both of you combined. The craftsmanship is simple but sturdy, the sort of work that keeps sheep from redecorating the town. And speaking of sheep, you hear a bleat from somewhere behind a row of houses. You decide not to investigate. Further along, you reach a small neighborhood square, where a few benches surround a low stone wall. A thin elderly man sits on one of the benches, sharpening a knife with slow, practiced strokes. The sound is soft shh, shh, almost like sand against stone. He glances up when you approach. "You're new," he says plainly. "This again." You nod, passing through. He studies your face with calm, knowing eyes. Most who pass through are looking for something. You consider that, maybe. He shrugs. Or looking to avoid something. His smile is faint, not unkind. Doesn't matter. The town watches strangers. You're beginning to realize this. The old man gestures toward a group of women chatting at the far end of the square. "If you mean no harm, be polite. Speak softly. Don't crowd people. Don't touch their animals." He pauses, then adds dryly, "Especially not their geese." You blink. "Geese?" He nods, with the solemnity of someone recalling a traumatic memory. "Meanest creatures alive." You mentally elevate geese to the same danger category as medieval diseases and questionable water. The old man continues sharpening his knife, but his tone softens. "People here aren't unkind, just guarded. Hard lives make for careful hearts." Then, with a slight grin, he adds, "Though if you compliment someone's bread, they'll love you forever." You thank him and move on, carrying his advice like a small lantern. You turn down a road that feels familiar, narrow, winding, shaded by leaning beams overhead. Then it hits you. This is the same street you walked earlier. Remember the way the buildings slanted like sleepy giants. Remember the soft patch of dirt between the stones. Remember the lantern with the crooked metal frame. It's all here again. A subtle loop, bringing you back to where your day began. Only now, the street feels different. Fuller. warmer, more alive. You've learned enough to stand here without sticking out too badly. Enough to walk without tripping over customs or courtesies. Enough to understand that survival here involves as much social navigation as practical knowledge. As you stroll down the familiar path, a rooster crows somewhere behind you, late, confused, or simply motivated by personal drama. You smile to yourself. You're starting to understand medieval rhythms. And, somehow, you're still alive. For now, you follow the curve of the street until it widens into another small square. A calmer, humbler one with a single bench, a stone trough, and a house leaning so dramatically you suspect even gravity is politely ignoring it. A few people move about at an unhurried pace, sweeping, carrying buckets, shaking blankets out of windows. You pause for a moment, adjusting to the quieter rhythm here. Then it hits you, the faint, lingering truth of medieval Europe. Everything looks like it could make you sick. You don't want to judge an entire century, but your immune system is currently giving you a small, anxious whisper. Please don't touch anything. The smells, the textures, the water sources, it all feels like a living obstacle course, specifically designed to test your modern microbial fragility. A woman nearby empties a bucket into the drainage channel that runs down the middle of the street. The water is not clear. You take a deliberate step back, because you already know enough to understand that medieval drainage systems are equal parts necessity and hazard. The water trickles down the sloping stone, carrying fragments of straw, bits of who knows what, and a faint smell that suggests the bucket's previous contents once had opinions. Your modern instincts whisper, don't slip, don't touch, don't breathe too deeply. You inhale through your nose anyway, for science, and immediately regret it. A man, middle-aged, balding, surprisingly cheerful, watches you from where he's repairing a wooden stool. First time here? He asks. You give a careful nod. He chuckles. You're standing too close to the gutter. That's where the sickness runs. You step back instantly. Right. Thank you. He shrugs. You learn fast or you don't last. That seems fair. A historical fact drifts softly into your mind. Medieval towns struggled constantly with sanitation. Water sources were shared, waste disposal was often crude, and illness travelled quickly. Not because people were careless, but because the world was simply harder. Cleaner water existed, yes, but getting to it, keeping it, and using it safely, that took effort. So did staying healthy. The man goes back to fixing his stool, humming something melodic and surprisingly upbeat for someone living next to a biohazardous drainage system. You continue walking, careful to give gutters a respectful berth from now on. Across the square, you spot a woman hanging laundry on a rope strung between two beams. The shirts and linens flap softly in the breeze, each one washed by hand, each one a small victory against dirt and time. She glances at you over her shoulder, offering a nod that feels almost warm. It reminds you that people here fight for cleanliness every day. Water is fetched from wells. Laundry is scrubbed with sand or harsh soap. Clothes are boiled. Floors are swept constantly because dust collects without mercy. It's all exhausting, but it's survival. You pass by, slowly, appreciating her effort. She catches you looking at the laundry, and her expression shifts slightly defensive, as though expecting criticism. Drying fast today, you say lightly. Her shoulders relax. Aye. The sun helps. And that's when you catch today's obscure cultural tidbit. In some medieval towns, it was considered bad luck to leave washing out overnight. Spirits or thieves, depending on the superstition, might tamper with it. Clean laundry was precious. Losing it was a minor disaster. You file that away in your growing list of important things you did not know but now definitely do. You keep walking through the quieter lanes, taking note of where people gather and where they avoid. You cross another street, and a thin cat darts in front of you, slinking under a bench like a silent shadow. It's followed by another cat, then another. Ah, you've found the medieval public health department. Cats here play an essential role, though no one has formally acknowledged it yet. They hunt rodents, protect grain supplies, and generally keep the town from becoming an all-you-can-eat buffet for pests. People tolerate cats the way modern people tolerate smoke alarms, annoying sometimes, but life-saving. As you watch the cats scatter, a young woman approaches carrying a basket of herbs. She walks confidently, her steps steady, her posture upright. She glances at you, then at the cats, and smirks. Good sign, she says. Where there are cats, there's less plague. You nearly trip. Oh, you say, casually, as though she hasn't just said the most ominous sentence of your day. Good. The woman tilts her head. You're not from around here. It's not even a question. You brace yourself. Just traveling. She eyes you with the kind of direct, unblinking curiosity that suggests she's either highly intelligent or extremely bored. Maybe both. What are you carrying? She asks. Nothing, you say truthfully. Then you're either wealthy or foolish. You're not sure which one you prefer to be accused of. Before you can respond, she lifts a sprig of rosemary from her basket. Take this, she says, placing it gently in your hand. The leaves are soft, fragrant, earthy. Helps keep bad air away. You stare at the herb, touched by the unexpected kindness. Thank you, you say. She nods once, as though this is the appropriate reaction from someone who's been handed free medieval protection from airborne doom. Then she continues down the road, basket swaying at her side. You stand there for a moment, holding the rosemary like it's a tiny, green, aromatic shield. A man pushing a cart full of straw glances at you and laughs lightly. You'll fit in fine, he says. If you carry herbs, people think you know things. You smile because, in this moment, you feel a tiny spark of belonging. He adds, course, historians still debate whether herbs truly protected folks, or just smelled nicer than the streets. You accept that as the scholarly uncertainty of the day. The sun climbs slowly upward, warming the rooftops, illuminating windows, giving the entire town a golden tint that softens even the most questionable corners. People sweep, wash, stir, carry, chatter. Life moves forward in steady, practical rhythms. You breathe through your rosemary now, just in case, and walk onward with purpose. Staying alive here isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about understanding how people live, how they cope, how they care for themselves and each other in small, resilient ways. And somehow, you're doing it. You're learning where not to stand. You're learning what not to touch. You're learning that cats are your friends, and as you turn the corner into another sunlit street, the goat appears again, still judging you. But this time, you raise the rosemary. The goat sniffs once, unimpressed, and wanders off. Progress. You follow the slope of the sunlit road until the smell of cooking drifts toward you, warm, savory, unmistakably promising. Your stomach, which has been running solely on time travel adrenaline and one whiff of someone else's breakfast, perks up like a medieval hunting dog catching its first scent of stew. You turn a corner and find a cluster of small food stalls arranged along a wider lane. Smoke curls from clay ovens. A pot bubbles over a fire. A woman ladles something thick and beige into wooden bowls, while customers shuffle in a loose, vaguely polite line. Your pulse rises with hope. Then you remember. Obtaining food here requires more than money. It requires understanding customs, prices, and the subtle art of not offending someone who holds a ladle like a weapon. You begin your approach cautiously. The first stall sells coarse bread round, dense loaves arranged in a neat stack. The baker, hands dusted in flour, sizes you up with a look that says he's mentally calculating whether you're here to buy, barter, or breathe suspiciously near his inventory. You examine the loaves, trying to look like a knowledgeable consumer of medieval carbohydrates. The baker raises one eyebrow. You nod as if evaluating the crumb texture, even though these loaves all look identical, hard enough to break a window, yet humble enough to feed an entire family. Before you can ask the price, someone elbows gently past you and exchanges a few coins for 2 loaves. You listen carefully, pretending to admire the bread, but really waiting to hear the price. 2 small pennies. Not cheap, not outrageous, just enough to remind you that bread is the financial backbone of medieval survival. You step back because you realize something else. You don't have any medieval currency, and you would prefer not to trade your cloak for a loaf of bread, because it's keeping you alive and hiding your modern stitching. You move on. The next stall offers pottage, a thick, stew-like mixture of vegetables, grains, and whatever happened to be available that morning. The woman serving it has a broad smile, calloused hands, and the practiced efficiency of someone who feeds half the town daily. You join the line, hoping to blend in behind a man wearing a tunic patched so many times it has become a mosaic. The air smells of leeks, barley, and something faintly smoky. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. The woman behind you chuckles softly. "Haven't eaten yet?" she asks. You turn with a tight smile. "Not yet." "Then you'll want the pottage," she says. Fills the belly better than bread alone. Her advice feels genuine, warm, and very welcome. When it's your turn, the woman with the ladle looks at you with the same curious but not unfriendly expression you've been picking up all morning. "What'll it be?" she asks. You look down at the rich, bubbling pot. This is it, the moment where you must secure food without creating an international incident across time. You clear your throat. "How much for a bowl?" "A half penny," she replies. You freeze. You definitely don't have that. Your brain sprints through the list of possible medieval bartering items on your person. A pouch full of modern lint, a belt buckle, and a branch of rosemary someone gave you for plague prevention. None of this feels like valid currency. You stand there awkwardly, and the woman's expression shifts. Not angry, not annoyed, just thoughtful. "Traveling, are you?" she asks, taking in your clothing, your hesitation, your general aura of person, without proper medieval paperwork. You nod slowly. She leans forward slightly. "Got anything to trade?" You consider holding out the rosemary, but something about offering a medicinal herb to a woman who makes pottage every morning feels a bit like offering a candle to a lighthouse keeper, so you go for honesty. "Not much," you admit softly. "Just passing through. Haven't had time to settle." There's a pause, a long, uncertain pause, where you consider the real possibility of starving in the past. Then the woman sighs, scoops a ladleful of pottage into a wooden bowl, and hands it to you. "Eat," she says. "Pay me next time you come through." You blink. "Aye, are you sure?" She shrugs. "Everyone's a stranger once. Besides, you look like you need feeding." You thank her with genuine gratitude, stepping aside to savor your meal. The pottage is thick, warm, and surprisingly satisfying. It tastes like barley, leeks, and the faint flavor of generosity. You sit near a low stone wall, eating slowly while watching the bustle of the street. The world around you settles into soft, practical rhythms. A man adjusting a horse's reins, a woman carrying chickens by their tied feet, a group of boys rolling a wooden hoop down the lane. Then, the day's obscure tidbit arrives when you overhear two older women chatting nearby. "Don't forget to bless your refill. Loaf before cutting it," one says. The other nods. "Bad luck otherwise. Blessing bread." You hadn't expected superstition to sneak up on you while you were chewing, but it tracks. Medieval life blends practicality with beliefs, small rituals that make sense when the world is unpredictable and fragile. Bread is essential, sacred even. Cutting it without respect, social faux pas and cosmic risk. You look down at your bowl. You have no bread to bless, but you murmur a polite, "Thank you," to the pottage anyway. Better safe than historically sorry. As you eat, someone sits down beside you, a man in a dark, hooded cloak. Not threatening, just quietly observant. He glances at your bowl, then at you. "You're new," he says. This again. You sigh softly. "Traveling." He nods slowly. "If you want to eat regularly, you'll need work." You pause mid-bite. "Work?" You echo. He gives a small, knowing smile. "Everyone works, even travelers, unless you're a noble. You're not a noble." You shake your head quickly, because pretending to be noble in medieval Europe is the fastest route to a bad day. He continues. "If you've got hands, you can earn bread." "What kind of work?" you ask carefully. He tilts his head, thinking. "Depends. Can you carry water? Chop wood? Clean stalls? Mend rope? Help with repairs? Watch children? Dig? Harvest? Grind grain? Or something?" He gestures vaguely at your clothes. "Something else?" You swallow a mouthful of pottage and offer the truest answer you can. "I'm willing to learn." The man laughs, not mocking but surprised. "Good. Then you'll survive." He stands, nods once, then walks off into the crowd. As he leaves, a final moment of scholarly uncertainty surfaces in your mind, gentle and honest. Historians still debate how much mobility travelers actually had in medieval towns, how easily they found work, how quickly locals accepted them. Some stories paint it as simple, others nearly impossible. Here, in this warm little moment with a bowl of borrowed pottage, the truth feels somewhere in between. You finish the last spoonful, warm and grateful, and hand the empty bowl back to the cook. Then the goat walks past. Of course it does. It stops, stares at your empty bowl, snorts softly, and wanders away like it has judged both your life choices and your table manners. You stand, brushing crumbs from your hands. You're alive. You're fed. And medieval Europe just handed you your first universal truth. If you want to survive here, you're going to need a job. You walk back into the flow of the street, the warmth from the pottage still settling happily in your stomach. The sun has now climbed high enough to brighten the rooftops and cast soft shadows across the cobblestones. Townsfolk move with purpose, carrying tools, leading animals, hauling goods, each person absorbed in their own small piece of the day. The world here doesn't pause for you, but it also doesn't push you away. You're simply drifting among them. But drifting won't get you fed again. You need work. Real medieval work. You take a slow breath, clutching your little sprig of rosemary like a charm of competence, and start scanning the street for opportunities. You're not sure what you're hoping to find, maybe a casual, help wanted sign carved into a wooden plank. Instead, you find a man yelling at a goose. The goose wins. You move on. A woman sweeping her doorway eyes you for a moment, but the broom in her hands is clearly a long-term commitment, and you sense she won't be handing it over anytime soon. A group of children chase each other around a stack of firewood, laughing, shrieking, nearly trampling a chicken. You smile despite yourself. Then you hear it. A voice calling out instructions in a tone that suggests someone is either running a workshop or a small military. You follow the sound. It leads you to a modest yard behind a timber-framed house, where a man is repairing wooden buckets. He works quickly, confidently, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, and his hands moving with practiced ease. Beside him, a younger man, likely his apprentice, struggles to keep up, dropping a tool with an echoing clatter. The master sighs heavily. You step closer, careful not to appear intrusive. "Need an extra hand?" you ask. The master looks up, eyes narrowing slightly as he studies you. His gaze lingers on your clothing, your posture, your general aura of, "I promise I'm trying." "You any good with tools?" he asks. You consider lying, but you've seen enough medieval tools today to know the truth would come out within minutes. "I can learn quickly," you offer. The master snorts. Apprentices always say that. The younger man pipes up. "He looks stronger than me." The master cuts him a glare so sharp the boy immediately resumes working. You wait, trying to look useful without doing anything dangerous. Finally, the master speaks. "Can you carry water?" "Yes." "Chop wood?" "Probably." "Hold something steady without dropping it, because this one," he jerks a thumb at his apprentice, "drops things like he's paid to do it." You nod vigorously. He hands you a wooden hoop, part of a bucket frame. "Hold this." You grasp it, firmly, competently. Two qualities the apprentice has apparently not mastered. The master inspects your grip, nods once, and starts hammering the iron hoop into place. Sparks fly. You hold steady. When he finishes, he steps back, squinting at the bucket. "Well," he says gruffly, "you didn't faint. That's better than half the lads I get." You beam internally. Externally, you maintain what you hope is a stoic medieval expression. The master wipes his hands on his apron. "I can give you a bit of work today. Hauling wood, carrying water, helping shape the hoops. Small things. Your heart lifts. You're hired. Kind of." He continues. "I pay at the end of the day." He looks you squarely in the eye. "You show up tomorrow. Maybe I'll give you real tasks." You nod. "Thank you." That's when the apprentice leans closer and whispers, "Don't mess up." He hasn't liked anyone since the tanner borrowed a hammer and never returned it. You whisper back, "I'll try not to." He whispers even more quietly, "Also, don't mention geese. He hates them." You nod solemnly. This is excellent advice. For the next hour, you help haul pieces of wood from a pile near the fence. The work is tiring but straightforward. You sweat. You breathe. You feel your hands roughening slightly with each piece you carry. It's honest, simple effort, and strangely grounding. As you work, the master gives occasional instructions. Not that one. No, not that one either. Hand me the other hoop. No, the other one. The other one. Eventually, you start to anticipate what he needs. Slowly, subtly, you begin fitting yourself into the small rhythm of the workshop. At one point, the apprentice asks, "Where are you from?" You give your now standard answer, "Far away." He nods as though this is entirely normal. We get travelers sometimes. Some stay, some don't. Why don't they stay? You ask. He shrugs. Work's hard. Food's simple. Houses are small. And people talk. You nod slowly, understanding more than you expected to. He pauses. Are you planning to stay long? You hesitate. Not sure yet, he grins. Then don't buy a goose. You let out a quiet laugh. Medieval humor is very goose-centric. You continue working until noon begins to warm the workshop, softening the shadows and brightening the planks. The master finally calls for a break. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve and step aside, letting the sunlight settle over you. As you rest, the apprentice holds up a half-finished bucket. This one's decent, he says proudly. The master grunts. It'll hold water, probably. The apprentice beams anyway. Then the master turns to you. Not bad, he says. Most travelers would have given up by now. You take that as a high compliment. A soft, thoughtful historical uncertainty floats into your mind. Historians still debate how common it was for travelers to take short-term work in small workshops. Some records suggest it was fairly normal. Others suggest travelers were viewed with caution. As always, the truth seems mixed. But right now, you're fitting in enough to earn a few coins. Enough to eat later. Enough to not starve tomorrow. As the break ends, you prepare to resume your work when a familiar sound echoes from outside the workshop. Bleat. No, it can't be. The goat steps into the yard with an expression that can only be described as supervisory disdain. The apprentice points. Is that your goat? You stare at the goat. The goat stares at you. You sigh. No. The goat wanders off, again. But not before knocking over a small stack of kindling. The master rubs his temples. I hate that goat. You silently agree. You return to work, feeling against all odds, a little more confident, a little more capable, a little more medieval. Because today, you did something real, something physical, something that tied you directly into the heartbeat of the town. You earned your place here, at least for the afternoon, and as the hammer rings out again, you realize, staying alive in medieval Europe isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about becoming part of the story. By mid-afternoon, the workshop's yard settles into a warm, drowsy rhythm. Sunlight pools across the planks, the hammering slows, and even the blacksmith 2 houses over seems to be taking a breather. The air smells faintly of resin, smoke, and the kind of sweat that earns its keep. You've survived several hours of honest medieval labor, the sort that would make your smartwatch panic and beg, fire you to hydrate. Which is funny, actually, because you are thirsty, and staying hydrated in medieval Europe is less grab a bottle from the fridge and more walk half a mile, carrying something heavy, hope no one dropped a fish in the well today, and try not to think too hard about the water's emotional journey. You stand, stretch your aching arms, and approach the master. Where can I get water? He wipes his hands on his apron and grunts. Wells on the north end, buckets by the path. Don't drop them. You nod like someone who absolutely will try not to drop them. The apprentice hands you a wooden bucket with a proud, helpful expression that suggests this is a rite of passage. Don't drink from the wrong side, he says solemnly. The wrong side, he leans in. Birds. You decide not to ask further questions. With that, you set off, following a dirt path that winds between houses and small gardens. A few chickens wander across your path, clucking indignantly as if you're trespassing on their personal estate. A woman nearby kneels in her herb patch, cutting mint with careful motions, and glances up with polite curiosity. As you walk, the sounds of the workshop fade into the background, replaced by the steady hum of the town. Laughter from a window, distant hammering, the thud, thud, thud of someone chopping wood. The air is cooler here, crossing into the shaded outskirts where houses thin out, replaced by hedgerows, open fields, and a few small orchards. Finally, the well comes into view, a sturdy stone circle with a wooden frame overhead, a rope dangling into its depths. Several buckets sit nearby, each one dented or stained but still doing its best. A small group of women is already there, drawing water and chatting in soft, measured voices. Their movements are practiced, efficient, not hurried, but purposeful. You slow your steps, because approaching a medieval well requires a level of social awareness normally reserved for entering a yoga studio mid-session. One woman wipes her brow and gives you a quick nod, acknowledging your existence but not quite inviting conversation. You nod back with equal neutrality. You wait your turn. When a space opens up, you step forward and grasp the rope. It's rough against your palms, scratchy with age. You lower the bucket into the well, hand over hand, the rope groaning softly as it unwinds. You feel the bucket hit the water below with a deep, echoing splash. You pull. It is heavy. Your arms protest immediately, reminding you they have only recently survived several hours of bucket-related labor. Still, you keep pulling, muscles straining, breath steady. The water rises inch by inch, and a slight breeze cools the sweat on your forehead. Finally, the bucket clears the edge. You set it down carefully, very carefully, because you now understand the immense medieval shame of spilling precious water in front of witnesses. The woman beside you glances at your bucket, then at your face. "Good pull," she says. You beam inside. "Thank you," you say, trying to match her calm tone. She motions toward your bucket. Let it settle a moment. Sometimes the silt stirs. And here arrives today's historical fact, wrapped in practicality. Many medieval wells required a settling moment, because sediment, insects, or stray debris often floated up when the bucket rose. Towns did their best to maintain wells, but perfection was not a medieval luxury. You wait. The woman fills her own jug, dips her finger in the water to taste it bravely, impressively, and nods with satisfaction before walking away. You crouch beside your bucket, watching as tiny flecks drift to the bottom. The water looks surprisingly clear, considering its commute. As you lift the bucket again, a teenage boy wanders up, eyeing your progress. "First time using our well?" "Yes," he nods. "You did all right. Not like that one man last week. Dropped the whole bucket." "Oh no." "Yup," he says with dramatic emphasis. "Splash. Lost the bucket. Lost his dignity. Took 3 hours to fish the thing out. You promise yourself not to repeat that tragedy." He grins suddenly. "And don't drink from the west side." "Why?" He shrugs. "The birds like that side." You believe him immediately. You take a cautious sip from the safe half of the bucket. The water is cool, slightly mineral, and leagues better than everything else you've smelled today. It's refreshing in a way you didn't know medieval water could be. Still, as you drink, a little scholarly uncertainty surfaces in your mind. Historians still debate how consistently fresh medieval well water truly was. Some records depict excellent, clean wells, others, polluted nightmares. Much depended on maintenance, geography, and luck. Today, you've found a good one. You fill your smaller bucket for the workshop, adjusting your stance so you don't slosh water onto your shoes. The boy watches you with mild amusement. "You carry it like someone who isn't used to carrying water," he says. "That's accurate. Any advice?" you ask. "Yeah," he says. "Don't trip." You thank him for his wisdom and begin the walk back. The road feels longer with a full bucket. Your arms ache. Your shoulders complain. Halfway down the path, you stop to rest. The water sloshes gently, catching the light like a tiny, portable pond. A rooster stares at you from atop a fence post. You ignore it. As you continue, you're startled by a sudden bleat. No, 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 no. The goat appears around the corner of a house, sauntering toward you with the smug confidence of someone who has never carried water a day in its life. It approaches slowly, very slowly, staring at your bucket, You clutch it protectively. Don't even think about it, you whisper. The goat steps closer. It sniffs. You take one careful step back. The goat looks offended, as if you're the unreasonable one, and wanders off to harass a woman carrying apples. You exhale shakily. By the time you reach the workshop, your arms feel like noodles, but your bucket is still full, still intact, and still blessedly ungoat touched. The master nods approvingly. The apprentice looks impressed. You look like you might collapse, but you did it. You carried clean water across a medieval town without losing the bucket, spilling the water, or surrendering it to a goat. In this century, that's basically a promotion. You set the bucket down in the workshop with a thud that echoes faintly off the timber walls. The master glances over, grunts approvingly, and jerks his chin toward the half-finished row of wooden hoops beside him. Translation: Your water has been accepted. Now get back to work. You straighten your back slowly, painfully, and return to your place beside the apprentice. He hands you a tool without looking, already absorbed in sanding the inside of a bucket frame. You take it, trying very hard to appear like someone who understands what this tool does. Fortunately, your task isn't complex. Hold things, pass things, don't drop things. The 3 pillars of medieval employment. You settle into the rhythm again, hammering, lifting, steadying. The workshop smells like warm wood, iron, and faint sweat, a combination that feels oddly comforting now. Every so often, a breeze slips in through the open door, carrying whispers of the world outside. Children laughing, a dog barking, the uneven melody of someone playing a flute very badly. The apprentice leans toward you. Your hands hurt yet? You flex your fingers. They definitely hurt. A little. He grins. By sundown, you'll have blisters the size of apples. Comforting. Better blisters than splinters, he says, holding up his palm. Had one so big once it changed my personality. You're not sure if he's joking. You decide not to ask. An hour passes, maybe more. Time in the workshop is measured less by minutes, and more by how many buckets you've helped with. By the time the master finally calls for another break, your arms feel as if they've been forged alongside the iron hoops. You step outside, breathing in the fresher air. The sun is still high but beginning its slow descent, softening the edges of buildings and turning shadows long and lazy. A few people walk by carrying bundles of kindling. Someone waves in your direction, not at you specifically, but at the workshop in general. Still, you accept it. You sit on a low stone ledge, letting your muscles cool. The apprentice joins you a moment later, plopping down with the energy of someone who has been doing this since childhood and will probably keep doing it until he turns into a tree. You're doing well, he says, surprising you. Really? He nods. Haven't dropped anything. Haven't fainted. Haven't cried. That puts you ahead of most. You blink. People cry? Oh yes, he says solemnly. Especially travelers. Especially after the 3rd bucket. You chuckle, but then notice him studying your cloak again. You really are far from home, he says quietly. There's something gentle in his tone. Not suspicious, not probing, just curious. I am, you admit. He nods slowly, accepting your answer without demanding more. Well, he says, if you're staying the night, you'll need a place to sleep. You hadn't thought that far ahead. Time travel doesn't come with hotel accommodations, and medieval Europe definitely doesn't offer walk-in inns with free breakfast and soft pillows. You swallow. Any suggestions? He thinks. Maybe the alehouse. Or the stable if you don't mind animals. Or... He hesitates. You could ask Marta. Who's Marta? He points down the road toward a house with wide windows and a herb garden in front. Widow. Needs help sometimes. Lets travellers stay a night or two if they're polite. He pauses. You are polite. You try very hard to take that as a compliment. Before you can say more, the master calls you both back in. Break time is over. You rise slowly and return to the workshop. Now the work shifts. Less hammering, more sanding, more shaping, more passing tools back and forth. The master mutters instructions occasionally, but mostly he just works, endlessly focused. While sanding a handle, you overhear 2 men outside, discussing something with lively enthusiasm, whether today is a good day to start brewing a fresh batch of ale. One insists, yes, the barley is perfect. The other insists, no, the moon is wrong. The debate spirals into passionate arm flailing. This unexpectedly leads to today's obscure tidbit. In some regions, medieval brewing schedules followed lunar cycles, not because the moon actually affected the beer, but because people liked to believe everything important was tied to the heavens. If the moon said brew, they brewed. If the moon said don't brew, they begrudgingly obeyed. You file that away. Another charming superstition in an ever-growing list. Inside, the workshop grows warm as the afternoon sun tilts through the doorway. You wipe sweat from your brow with your sleeve, leaving a smudge of sawdust behind. You are now officially coated in the scents and textures of medieval manual labor. Wood dust, smoke, and the faint undertone of I haven't washed my hands properly in several centuries. Another hour passes, maybe two. When the master finally sets down his hammer and stretches his back, you nearly weep with relief. That's enough for today, he says. Go wash before you scare the livestock. This is probably a joke. You hope. The apprentice hands you a rag for your hands. It's rough, but it removes most of the grit. Then he points toward a small basin near the back of the yard. Water's clean enough. Don't drink it. Why not? He shrugs. Birds. Right. Birds again. You wash your hands, watching the cloudy water swirl away. Your fingers are sore, raw, but still functional. You feel strangely proud. You did real medieval labor. Enough to earn the master's grudging respect. Enough to secure a meal later. Enough to keep going. When you return to the main yard, the master counts out a few coins and places them in your palm. Come back tomorrow, he says, without looking directly at you. In medieval employer language, this is basically, you did good. You bow your head. Thank you, he grunts. Don't thank me. Thank the work. You don't argue. As the workshop shutters close, you step out into the late afternoon light. The town glows faintly golden, warm, dusty, alive. People head home from fields. Smoke drifts upward from clay ovens. Children chase each other with sticks. A dog decides the middle of the road is the best place for a nap. Your body aches. Your feet hurt. Your clothes look slightly worse than this morning, but you're still alive. And as you walk down the familiar road toward the widening edge of town, you hear a sound behind you. Bleat. You turn. The goat stands there, perfectly centered in the road, staring with mild disapproval. You sigh. Fine. You tell it quietly. You win today. The goat narrows its eyes, as if to say, I win every day, then walks away. And you continue forward, into the deepening afternoon, with a few coins in your pocket and the first real hint that you might actually, to make it through this century. The late afternoon light drapes itself across the town in long golden strokes, softening the edges of every rooftop and turning the dust in the air into tiny floating embers. You can feel the day winding down, not stopping, not rushing, just gently folding into evening. It's a comforting shift, except for the realization settling in your stomach. You still don't have anywhere to sleep. Your few coins rattle lightly in your pocket. They feel small, humble, slightly warm from being held all afternoon and deeply inadequate for buying an actual bed. Medieval inns exist, yes, but they're rare in small towns and often meant for merchants, not time-traveling bucket apprentices. So you take the apprentice's advice and head toward the herb-scented house he pointed out earlier. As you approach, you notice the garden first. Rows of sage, mint, lavender, and rosemary. Their leaves fluttering in the warm breeze. Clay pots line the windowsill, each one filled with a tiny plant or a drying bundle of something green and medicinal looking. You can smell the earth and herbs from several steps away. It's calming in a way nothing else today has been. Carefully, you step up to the door and knock gently. Knocking too loudly in the medieval world is suspicious. Knocking too quietly is also suspicious. You aim for polite traveller who definitely does not intend crime. The door opens after a moment. A woman in her 50s stands there, strong posture, focused eyes, sleeves rolled halfway up her arms like someone ready to work at any moment. This must be Marta. She studies you with an expression that isn't unfriendly, just deeply efficient. Yes? She asks. You bow your head slightly. Good evening. I was told you sometimes. Help travellers who need a place for the night. She doesn't reply right away. Instead, she looks you up and down. Your dusty cloak, your tired posture, your faint smell of sawdust and medieval sweat. You brace for rejection. Finally, she nods once. Come in. You step inside. The house is tidy in the way only hard-working people can maintain. Everything has a purpose. Every tool has a place. Every corner holds something practical. The air smells faintly of herbs, wood smoke, and bread cooling on a table. Marta gestures toward a bench. Sit. You do so quickly. She pours water from a jug into a wooden cup and hands it to you. Drink. Slowly. You obey. The water is cool, herbal, faintly sweet. Your throat relaxes as the exhaustion of the day settles deeper into your bones. She watches you quietly, not suspiciously, more like a healer, assessing whether you're about to faint or simply tired. You worked today, she finally says. It's not a question. I did, you say. With Walden? You blink. The cooper, she snorts. He insists he's a cooper, makes 2 buckets a day and complains like he's carrying the whole town. You smile, a small shed, the moment of amusement. Marta leans against the table. You're not from here. You inhale slowly. I'm traveling. She nods as if this is perfectly acceptable. Travelers come through sometimes. Some troublemakers, some honest, some lost. Which one are you? Just lost, you say softly. She gives the faintest smile. You wear it well. She crosses her arms. If you stay here, you follow my rules. You don't wander the house at night. You help with chores in the morning. And you leave when the sun is high unless there's rain or trouble. You nod immediately. Understood. And I don't want payment tonight, she adds. But if you stay more than 1 night, you'll contribute. That's fair. She steps aside. Come. You follow her down a small hallway to a spare room, a humble space with a straw mattress, a wool blanket, and a small shelf holding a candle stub. The mattress is thin, but to your aching body it looks like heaven. You can sleep here, she says. Your voice comes out softer than intended. Thank you. She nods once. I'll bring food shortly. As she leaves, you sit on the edge of the bed. The straw beneath the cloth cover crackles softly. It smells faintly of hay, dust, and honesty. You run your hand along the wooden wall, feeling the smoothness where countless hands have touched before you. You take a slow breath. You survived morning confusion. You survived the marketplace. You survived the goat. You survived a job that required actual physical labor. And now, miraculously, you have a room for the night. A minute later, Marta returns with a bowl of stew and a hunk of bread. You eat slowly, grateful for every warm, savory bite. The bread is firm, but much softer than the breakfast bricks you saw earlier. Made this morning, she says. Still fresh. You nod. It's wonderful. She raises an eyebrow. Blessed it before baking. Helps it rise. Ah, there's the obscure tidbit of the section. Some medieval bakers blessed their dough not for religion alone, but because they believed the bread behaved better for it. Less collapsing, less cracking, less accidental bread failure. You smile into your bowl. Bread superstition is becoming one of your favorite things about this century. When you finish eating, Marta gathers the bowl and studies you again. You worked hard today, she says. Your eyes look tired. They feel tired. She nods approvingly. Good. Means you used the day well. Before she leaves the room, she adds, there's a basin for washing out back. Use it before bed. Even the cleanest travelers carry dust. You thank her, and she steps out. You make your way outside, where the evening air feels cool and fresh. The basin is filled with water that reflects the fading light. You wash your face and hands, watching the dirt swirl away. The water smells faintly of lavender, Marta's touch, no doubt. As you dry off, you notice the sky streaked in soft pinks and deepening blues. Villagers walk by with lanterns, chatting quietly. The town feels different in the evening, gentler, slower, threaded with a calm that coaxes even your restless thoughts into stillness. That's when you feel it again, a soft presence behind you. You turn. The goat stands at the edge of the yard, staring, silently, like a tiny, judgmental dusk spirit. You point at it. Not tonight. The goat snorts and walks away. Victory. Small, but sweet. You return to your room, slip under the wool blanket, and let your body sink into the bed. The straw shifts softly beneath you. Outside, crickets begin a quiet chorus. A lantern flickers in the hallway. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and then settles. As your eyes grow heavy, you realize you're safe. You're indoors. You're alive. For tonight, at least. You made it. You wake slowly. Not suddenly. Not with panic, but with the gentle, disorienting drift of someone who fell asleep in a century that does not normally provide comfort. For a moment, you lie very still beneath the wool blanket, listening to the unfamiliar symphony of medieval nighttime. The sounds are soft but layered. The faint chirping of crickets, the low creak of wooden beams expanding and settling, the distant rasp of someone snoring 3 houses away. Walls are thin, and every so often the clop of a late traveller's horse on the road. A dog barks once, offended by something ordinary. The air carries a cool, earthy scent, touched by herbs hanging from Marta's rafters. It is, unexpectedly, peaceful. You blink, letting your eyes adjust to the faint moonlight slipping through the cracks in the shutters. The room is small, but it feels safe, solid. A place where you are not immediately required to carry water, dodge livestock, or justify your existence to a suspicious baker. You take a slow breath. Then another. Your body aches in new and meaningful ways. Shoulders tight, arms sore, hands tender. You feel each muscle like it's announcing its presence. This is what medieval work feels like, you think. Your joints agree. Eventually, you sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes. Your mouth tastes faintly of stale air and barley stew, a reminder that medieval dental hygiene is still in its aspirational phase. You take a sip of water from the cup Marta left beside your bed, swish it around, and swallow. It helps. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed. Straw rustles beneath you. Your feet touch the cool floorboards. Outside the shutter, the night hums softly, steady and unhurried. You check the tiny sliver of moon still visible. Maybe 2 hours until dawn. Not terrible. Not dangerous. You settle back down, clutching your blanket, letting your thoughts drift in the hazy drift between sleep and waking. And that's when you realize something important. You're dreaming differently here. Maybe it's the exhaustion. Maybe it's the herbal afterscent in the blankets. Maybe it's your brain trying to process goat-related traumas. But your dreams last night were vivid, strange colors, strangely slow motion, echoes of voices you don't recognize. Someone handing you bread, someone stirring a pot, someone speaking in a dialect your sleeping mind pretended to understand. You also dreamt of a rooster wearing a tiny knight's helmet, but we won't judge that. You lie awake a while longer, letting the images settle. Finally, you drift off again. You wake a second time to soft morning light filtering through the shutters. It's pale, gentle, and cool, like a whispered reminder that another medieval day is waiting outside your door. The smells are different now. Less earth, more smoke. Less night air, more morning bread. You hear faint footsteps moving around the house and the soft clink of pottery. Somewhere in the kitchen, something warm is heating over a fire. Your stomach notices. You get up carefully, stretch very carefully, and step out into the hallway. Marta stands by the hearth, stirring a pot with the focused determination of someone who takes breakfast rituals seriously. A loaf of bread sits cooling on the table. A small knife lies beside it, gleaming gently in the morning light. She glances at you. You slept well. It's not phrased as a question. Yes, you say. Thank you. She gestures toward the basin. Wash your face. Bread will be ready. You obey gladly. The cold water shocks your senses awake, and when you look into the basin afterward, you see a medieval version of yourself. Tired, slightly dusty, hair doing its best interpretation of straw aesthetic, and eyes soft with early morning fog. Back in the kitchen, Marta slices the bread with smooth precision. The loaf is softer than yesterday's, with a warm interior that smells like comfort. She hands you a piece along with a small bowl of warm broth. Eat, she says. You'll need it. You sit at the table, grateful. The bread is delicious, firm but tender, with a subtle hint of herbs. The broth is thin but nourishing. You eat slowly, appreciating every bite like someone who remembers supermarket bread, with both fondness and guilt. Marta watches you for a moment. Walden paid you? You nod. A few coins. Good. You'll need more. You swallow a mouthful. For what? For existing, she says simply. Food isn't free. Water isn't free. Roofs most certainly aren't free. A traveller survives by working. You nod. She's right. She's always right. You finish eating, then help her gather the bowls. She allows it without comment, which you interpret as high praise. Just as you're about to offer to sweep or carry wood, someone knocks on the door. It's a firm, business-like knock, the kind that suggests someone official, someone purposeful, someone who might check for unauthorized goats. Marta straightens her posture and opens the door. Standing outside is a man in plain but well-kept clothing, a leather pouch slung over one shoulder, and a wooden tally stick in his hand. He looks like the medieval version of someone who takes notes for a living. He nods to Marta. Morning, morning, she replies. His eyes shift to you. Not suspicious, not hostile, just professionally curious. You're the traveller staying here, he says. You tense slightly. Yes. He nods once, sizing you up. Name? You hesitate. Medieval Europe loves records, tax records, debt records, who owns which goat records. But names can travel lightly. You give him one. A simple one. A safe one. He writes it on the stick. Walden hired you yesterday? Yes. Good. 1 day's labour means you're not idle. He nods approvingly. The town watches idlers. Marta cuts in, perhaps to soften the implication. They're not idle. They worked well. He glances at her. That seems to settle the matter. He tucks the tally stick back into his pouch. If you work again today, you'll be counted as a guest labourer. You'll need no fee for staying. If not, he shrugs, visitors pay. You nod quickly. I'll work. Good. He steps back. We like useful strangers. Then, with the air of a man who has at least 12 more houses to visit before breakfast, he leaves. You turn to Marta. Visitors pay? You ask quietly. She nods. 2 pennies a night, unless they work. You don't want to spend your coins on walls. Definitely not. She hands you your cloak. Go on then. Walden starts early. You step outside. The morning is brisk, clean, optimistic. A soft breeze moves through the herb garden. Smoke drifts from chimneys in thin white ribbons. People are beginning their day feeding chickens, drawing water, calling to neighbours. It feels almost familiar now. You take your first steps toward the workshop, then you freeze. Because standing in the middle of the road, blocking your path, is the goat. It stares at you with deep, unwavering expectation. You sigh. Fine. You tell it. Walk with me. The goat blinks, then follows. And you, a time traveller who has somehow acquired an unofficial goat escort, walk into your second full medieval day. Ready, sort of, fed, barely, judged, continuously. And officially employed again. The morning air carries a crisp bite as you walk toward the workshop, the goat trotting beside you like a self-appointed supervisor. Its little hooves click on the cobblestones, perfectly in rhythm with your tired steps. You rub your sleepy eyes and stretch your shoulders, which may never forgive you for yesterday's introduction to manual labour. Villagers pass you with nods, some curious, some indifferent, one openly amused at your goat companion. A baker sweeping his doorway shakes his head. Strange times, he mutters to himself, though whether he means you or the goat is unclear. When you reach the workshop, you find the apprentice already outside, splitting thin logs with a small hatchet. He brightens when he sees you. You came back, he says. Good. I didn't want to do all the wood alone. I'm here, you say, trying to sound heroic instead of sore. He eyes the goat. And you brought that. It brought itself. You clarify. The apprentice nods sympathetically. It does that. Walden, the master cooper, emerges from inside the workshop carrying two half-finished bucket frames. His eyes flick to you, then to the goat. "No animals in the shop," he grunts. "I didn't bring it," you say automatically. The goat bleats in, what you can only interpret as defense. Walden points at it. "Shoo!" The goat refuses. Walden sighs, the sigh of a man who has accepted that some creatures, goats and apprentices, cannot be compelled. "Fine. Keep it by the door." You take your position inside, ready to resume your role as apprentice to the apprentice. Your hands ache, but there's a strange comfort in returning to a place where you know what you're supposed to do. The smells, wood dust, smoke, iron, wash over you like a second round of medieval coffee. The morning's work begins with shaping wooden staves for a new set of barrels. Walden works with intense focus. The apprentice hums tunelessly, and you try very hard not to drop anything. After a while, Walden hands you a tool. "Hold this," firmly. You do. You hold it like your life depends on it, which, today, might be partially true. He examines your grip. "Better," he says. You glow with irrational pride. The apprentice leans toward you, whispering conspiratorially. He only says better when things are actually going well. That feels like winning a small medieval award. As you work, people pass by outside, their voices drifting in. You hear snippets of conversation, someone discussing weather, signs, someone fretting about the price of barley, someone claiming their cousin saw a fox with glowing eyes. This last one piques the apprentice's interest. "Did he really?" he asks aloud. Walden snorts. "Foxes don't glow. People see what they want to. Or what they fear," the apprentice says thoughtfully. Walden pauses mid-hammer. "Mostly that." You're beginning to learn that medieval life is fueled by equal parts practicality and imagination. People work hard, but they also tell stories, small ones, strange ones, embroidered with superstition and exaggeration. It's how the world makes sense to them. As the sun climbs higher, a pair of women stop outside the workshop. They aren't customers. They're talking with the distinct cadence of neighbors sharing vital news. "And I heard she refused to bless the dough," one says. "No wonder it collapsed," the other replies gravely. The apprentice whispers. "Baker gossip, best kind," Walden mutters, without looking up. "Ignore them. You try. You really do." But the conversation is like a medieval podcast happening in real time. And her nephew says a traveller came through yesterday. Unusual looking, odd cloak. You freeze slightly. "Oh?" the other woman asks. "Saw him near the market. Looked lost, and tired, and possibly doomed." You blink. "Possibly doomed." Walden glances at you. "Don't take it personally. People here assume every stranger is doomed. Saves time." You nod slowly. The women continue. "Well, if he goes near the Old South well, he will be doomed." "That well again? I thought it was sealed. With boards." "Boards don't stop curses." You exchange a look with the apprentice. He whispers, "Don't go near the South well." Noted. More chatter drifts in. Someone complaining about a stolen hen. Someone praising the turnip harvest. Someone insisting they saw the Lord's steward looking unusually pale. "Maybe he saw the fox," someone answers. It's fascinating, like an entire ecosystem of tiny stories moving through the town. You realize something important. Gossip is one of medieval Europe's main information systems, and you have entered its network. Walden eventually steps outside to check a shipment of wood, leaving you and the apprentice sanding staves. The apprentice takes this quiet moment as an invitation to talk. "Do you know much about wells?" he asks. "Enough to avoid cursed ones." He nods solemnly. "Good rule." Then, more quietly, "Do you know much about people?" You hesitate. "A little." He tilts his head at you. You listen. Most travelers talk too much. You smile. Listening is safer. "True," he says. "Also smarter." He hesitates a moment, then adds, "People here are cautious, but they're not cruel. If you work, if you respect the town, they'll protect you. Not from everything," he adds with a shrug, "but from most things." It's strangely comforting. You work in silence for a while longer, letting your hands find the rhythm again. You sand, shape, hold, Brace. Walden returns and inspects your work with a critical eye. He says. You don't breathe. He nods once. Good enough. High praise. The apprentice beams at you. You're practically a local now. You laugh softly. Does that mean the goat will stop following me? You ask. No, both Walden and the apprentice say at the same time. You sigh. Around midday, Walden dismisses you and the apprentice for a break. You step outside into warm sunlight and stretch your aching arms. Life flows through the road in its usual patterns, calm, steady, unhurried. You feel something tug at your cloak. You turn. The goat is right behind you, staring expectantly. You kneel slightly. Why are you like this? The goat headbutts your knee lightly. You sigh again. You know, the apprentice says, watching from the doorway. Some people believe goats can sense trouble. Is that true? Historians still debate it, he says with a straight face. You rub your temples. Great. A possibly supernatural goat. Exactly what your medieval survival situation needed. You stand, dust off your cloak, and take a few steps toward the main road. The goat follows, of course. Somewhere ahead, you hear the soft clang of a bell, a signal that the midday meal is beginning for many workers. Your stomach stirs hopefully, your mind stirs anxiously, your fate stirs, goat ward. You take a deep breath. A new medieval afternoon waits. More work, more hazards, more humanity, and probably more livestock-based judgment. But you're here. You're learning. You're surviving. And very quietly, somewhere beneath the surface, you're starting to belong. The bell's soft clang rolls through the town like a gentle wave, and you follow it instinctively, part hunger, part curiosity, part survival instinct. The apprentice walks beside you, wiping sawdust from his sleeves, while the goat trots slightly behind, as though it has appointed itself your personal security detail. Or critic, possibly both. The road widens near the centre of town, forming a loosely defined courtyard where a few makeshift tables and benches have been set up. Workers gather here at midday, bowls and loaves in hand, settling into a communal rhythm of eating, chatting, and complaining about their morning. Smoke from nearby hearths drifts lazily upward, carrying the delicious scent of onions and warm broth. Your stomach practically applauds. Come on, the apprentice says. If we're late, all the good bowls get taken. You nod, following him to a food stall run by a round-faced woman with flour-dusted hands and the posture of someone who has never known the moment's rest. She ladles thick pottage today, noticeably richer, with peas and maybe carrots into wooden bowls as if fueling an army. When she sees you, she pauses a beat, then smiles faintly. The traveller, she says. You brace for suspicion, but her tone is light, almost teasing. The hungry traveller. You correct gently. She snorts. Aren't we all? She hands you a bowl without asking for payment. Walden must have settled things for his workers. Or maybe she simply trusts that anyone covered in sawdust has earned lunch. You sit beside the apprentice on a bench. Workers cluster around you in loose clusters, speaking over one another with the loud, cheerful ease that comes from shared exhaustion. You listen. One man complains that his cow keeps escaping. Another insists his wife saw a spirit near the forest. A woman recounts with great drama how her neighbour's child ate 3 apples in one sitting. A gluttonous feat, she announces proudly. The apprentice nudges you. You hear all the good stories at midday. He is not wrong. You spoon the pottage carefully warm, hearty, textured, exactly what your body needs. It has the flavour of barley, peas, and a hint of herbs. Rosemary? Maybe. Your brain has become very rosemary aware since arriving here. As you eat, the apprentice gestures subtly toward a man on your left, a tall fellow with a beard so impressive it may have its own tax status. That's Torben, the apprentice whispers. Don't talk to him about chickens. You blink. Why? He lost a rooster in a very dramatic way. You try not to imagine what this means. The medieval world can become terrifyingly imaginative when livestock is involved. But before you can ask, Torben turns toward the group and speaks loudly enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear. It happened again. Oh no, the apprentice whispers. Brace yourself. Torben slams his hand on the table. The rooster attacked me. The workers around him groan in a mix of sympathy and resignation. Apparently, this is not a rare declaration. Torben continues. I was feeding it, like a good Christian man, and the beast looked me in the eye right in the soul and lunged. A woman across from him folds her arms. Maybe it senses fear. I do not fear chickens. Torben booms. You cough into your bowl to hide a laugh. Torben leans forward, voice lowering to a dramatic hush. It had intention. Malicious intention. The apprentice whispers. He's been feuding with that rooster for months. One of the older workers taps his spoon. You should just eat it. Torben recoils. Eat it. Eat it. He gestures wildly. If I eat it, it wins. You glance at the apprentice. How does that? Don't analyze it, he whispers. You'll only get stuck. Torben spends several more minutes recounting the rooster's sins, each more exaggerated than the last. It followed me. It glared at me. It crowed specifically when I walked by. It knocked over my bucket. It made my wife laugh at me. The last offense seems to be the real wound. You finish your pottage quietly, while the rooster saga continues. Eventually, Torben ends his tale with a dramatic flourish. Mark my words, the beast is plotting something. You try very hard not to respond. The woman next to you pats Torben on the arm. You'll settle with it soon enough. Not today, he mutters darkly. Not today. With lunch winding down, the conversations shift to more practical matters. Weather, work, someone's missing hammer, the rising price of onions. You soak in the details. This is a town's heartbeat, not grandeur, not battles, not kings, just small lives, lived sincerely. As people begin returning their bowls, a shadow suddenly falls across the table. You turn. The rooster stands there. Torben freezes. The rooster fluffs its feathers, stares him down. Let's. Out a low, ominous cluck. Torben whispers, see? The rooster takes a step closer. Torben stands so fast his bench tips. I will not be intimidated, he declares loudly. The rooster cocks its head. Torben backs away. Everyone watches, half amused, half bored, as the rooster struts triumphantly across the courtyard. You are witnessing a medieval political drama with poultry instead of nobles. The apprentice leans toward you. You should avoid that rooster. I plan to, you whisper, and avoid Torben when he talks about it. That story gets longer every day. You laugh softly, and then because this is your medieval life now, you say, I'll try. As the courtyard clears, you step aside with your bowl, feeling the sun warm your face. People pass by in small waves, returning to work with the relaxed heaviness of well-fed bodies. You turn to the apprentice. So, what's the rooster's problem? He shrugs. Some animals are just born with drama. You think about the goat. Yeah, you say. I'm aware. He claps your shoulder. Back to work? You sigh, glancing at your sore hands. Back to work. Before you leave the courtyard, you hear one last snippet of gossip. Your obscure tidbit for the day spoken by two women passing behind you. Did you hear the saying about roosters? No, what? That if it crows at sundown, someone will move their house before winter. You pause. Is that true? You ask the apprentice. Historians still debate it, he says with a perfectly straight face. You groan. Then, because your life is now measured in medieval strangeness, you walk back toward the workshop. Just as you turn the corner, you catch sight of a familiar shape sitting squarely in the middle of the road, the goat, staring, waiting, judging. Of course it is. You sigh deeply. You again. And together, goat included, you head into your medieval afternoon, ready for whatever the world throws at you next. The afternoon sun has shifted into a warm, mellow glow by the time you and the goat return to the workshop. Walden is already inside, rearranging planks with the seriousness of a man preparing for a royal inspection, or possibly another goose-related emergency. The apprentice enters behind you, humming cheerfully and completely unbothered by the rooster showdown you just survived. You step in behind him, ready to resume your daily round of holding things, not dropping things, and occasionally being glared at by livestock. But before you can even reach for a stave, Walden raises a hand. Not today. You pause. Not what? Not this work, he clarifies, jabbing a thumb toward the ceiling. Need help elsewhere. The apprentice brightens. Another job? Walden grunts. Roof trouble. You stare up at the workshop ceiling. Sure, it sags a little. Crooked beams, a few dark patches, a faintly ominous creak, but nothing catastrophic. Then Walden adds, Marta's roof. Ah, Marta your host. Marta who fed you. Marta who gave you the blessed bread and the lavender-scented water. Marta whose hospitality is soft but firm as iron. You nod instantly. I'll help. Walden gives a tiny approving grunt, the Cooper equivalent of a standing ovation. He hands you a bundle of simple tools. A wooden mallet, a handful of wooden pegs, a short saw, and a coil of rope that looks like it's seen more winters than both of you combined. The apprentice picks up another set and wraps a rope around his shoulders like a heroic character in a medieval woodworking saga. Come on, he says. Roof work is adventurous. Meaning dangerous? You ask. He smiles. Meaning adventurous. Great. As you head toward Marta's house, you notice something odd neighbors are watching. Not with hostility or suspicion, but with polite curiosity. Fixing a roof is a community-visible task, the medieval equivalent of painting your fence or acquiring an enormous ladder. By the time you reach Marta's home, she's outside, arms crossed, glaring up at the roof like it personally offended her. And to be fair, it probably did. Thank the heavens, she says when she sees Walden and the tools. It rained through the north corner last night. My table's still damp. Walden nods. We'll fix it. Marta turns to you. You know roofs. You open your mouth, close it, then decide honesty, with a slight twist, is best. I know climbing, you say, and holding things. She nods once, accepting that as a sufficient resume. The roof is low, but steep. A patchwork of wooden shingles that have warped over years of rain, heat, frost, and the general passage of time. You climb slowly, gripping the beams, trying not to think too much about gravity. The goat watches from below, maybe judging your climbing technique, probably judging. Up on the roof, you feel the world shift slightly beneath your feet. The shingles flex. The breeze brushes your ears. The town spreads around you like a quiet painting, cotton-colored smoke drifting from chimneys. People moving like clockwork figures, voices carrying lightly on the air. The apprentice joins you, handing you pegs and pointing to specific shingles. See those gaps? Rain sneaks in, drips down the beam, splashes onto the table. Ruins dinners, Marta calls up from below. And herbs. You nod solemnly. Unacceptable. You start removing the damaged shingles carefully, passing them to the apprentice. Walden stands below, barking occasional instructions. Not that one. Yes, that one. No, not that one. Don't drop anything on Marta. You try not to. Working on a roof is different from working inside the workshop. It's windier, brighter, and far more precarious. Every movement requires balance. Every plank seems determined to audition for most slippery. And your hands already poked, scraped, and, tired, get a little more of all three. At one point, while adjusting a shingle, you hear a faint conversation from the neighbouring yard. Why are travellers always on roofs? Maybe it's a sign. Of what? Change. Oh, I thought you meant rain. You pretend not to listen. As the apprentice steadies a beam for you, he leans over and whispers, Roof gossip is the best gossip. He's not wrong. Soon, a pair of local women stop near Marta's gate, watching with interest. One of them shades her eyes with her hand. Is he the one staying with you? She asks Marta. Yes, Marta replies. Helping with the roof? Yes. Interesting. They exchange a look. Oh no. The apprentice grins. See? Roof politics. What does this mean? You whisper. Oh, he says airily. It means absolutely everything. Below, the women shift closer. He works hard, one observes. Looks steady on a roof. The other agrees. Marta shrugs. He carries buckets well. You blink. Was that flattery? The apprentice laughs under his breath. If Marta praises you publicly, you're officially not considered suspicious. Officially? Well, He tilts his hand. Unofficially official. Walden calls up. Less talking, more fixing. You resume working. Piece by piece, you remove the rotted wood, replace the supports, straighten warped shingles, and secure new pegs. The roof begins to look stable, respectable, non-leaky. At one point, you shift your weight and feel a shingle crack beneath your boot. You freeze. The apprentice freezes. Walden freezes. Marta's eyes widen. Then miraculously the shingle holds. You slowly exhale. Try not to fall, the apprentice whispers helpfully. Excellent advice, you whisper back. You finish the final row, pressing the last peg in place. As you climb down, dust-covered and sweat-streaked, Marta examines the roof with narrowed eyes. She squints, steps back, tilts her head. She says. You hold your breath. It'll do. Relief washes over you. Walden nods, satisfied. The apprentice beams proudly. Marta gestures to you specifically. Come inside. I saved bread. This is the medieval equivalent of a knighthood. Inside, she gives you a piece of warm bread with a smear of soft cheese. The flavor is simple, honest, perfect. You eat quietly, savoring each bite like a reward. That corner won't leak again, Marta says, as she tidies her herbs. You did good work. You smile, happy to help. Good, she replies, because the chimney needs patching next week. You nearly choke on your bread. The apprentice laughs outside the window, and just as you're about to ask whether patching chimneys is considered adventurous, you hear a familiar sound right outside the door. Bleat. You turn. The goat stands there, again, staring through the doorway like it's inspecting your progress. Marta glances at it and mutters, "That creature knows too much." You nod solemnly. She's absolutely right, and as the sun dips lower, casting warm orange light across the rooftops, your repaired roof included, you begin to realize you're becoming useful here. And in medieval Europe, being useful is the closest thing to safety you'll ever earn. After the roof ordeal and the bread reward, you step back outside, stretching your sore shoulders as afternoon settles into its quiet middle hours. This is the time of day when the streets soften, when work slows just slightly, when even the chickens take a contemplative pause. The sunlight has shifted into a mellow, amber wash that makes the whole town feel like it's exhaling. The apprentice walks beside you, wiping his hands on his tunic. Walden heads back to the workshop to finish his own tasks, but the apprentice waves you onward. No need to hurry, he says. Walden works faster without witnesses. You blink. Is that true? Oh, absolutely, he says. If we're watching, he has to pretend we're learning. You consider this and decide it might actually make sense. You both stroll toward the quieter end of town, the goat trailing a few steps behind you in its usual, deeply unsettling, I know what you did last century way. Villagers give you the occasional nod, less suspicious now, more curious. Some even smile. Small ones, polite ones. But smiles nonetheless. You're starting to belong here in subtle ways. Enough to be recognized. Enough to be spoken to. Enough to have an unofficial goat. The apprentice gestures toward a shady path between two houses. Let's walk the long way. You follow him past a stretch of uneven fencing, a coop full of bored-looking chickens, and a tiny garden where turnips grow with medieval resilience. The air smells like dry earth and warm hay. Birds chirp softly from the rafters. For the first time in days, literal days, since your accidental time travel, you feel your thoughts slow. This part of town is calmer, the apprentice says. People like it here. Fewer carts, fewer arguments, fewer geese. Good, you say, because your traumatic poultry exposure has been sufficiently intense for one lifetime. You turn a corner and almost collide with a woman carrying a basket full of wool. She steadies herself, looks you up and down, and says, "Watch your step. Floorboards here are old." You look at the ground. Dirt. There are no floorboards. She continues walking as though this was entirely normal. The apprentice offers no explanation. Medieval conversation, you've learned, does not always come with context. You resume walking, and that's when you notice an older man sitting on a low bench outside a small house. He's sharpening a short blade with slow, methodical strokes. The sound, shh, 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 is steady, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. He lifts his gaze as you pass. Stranger, he says. You nod politely. Good afternoon. He eyes you thoughtfully. You survived the roof. You blink. You heard about that? He chuckles once dry, amused. Everything gets talked about here. Roof repairs, rooster feuds, the price of onions, the disappearance of Mary's wooden spoon. Someone stole a spoon? Oh no, he says. It vanished. Much worse. The apprentice nods solemnly beside you. You decide not to ask further questions about the spoon. The old man taps the blade against his palm. You're learning the town. Good. Better than some. Worse than others. But not the worst. You try to figure out if this is praise or a medieval insult. You settle on ambiguous compliment. He leans forward slightly. You know what the real dangers are here. Your stomach tenses reflexively. Illness? Wells? Roosters? Those? Yes, he says, amused. But not the worst ones. He points toward the open street. The worst dangers, he says softly, are the subtle ones, the things you don't notice, the things that look harmless. You swallow. Like what? He counts on his fingers. 1. Uneven stones. They break ankles. Then you can't work. Then you can't eat. Then you're trouble. The apprentice winces. Saw it happen once. A man tripped and ruined his winter plans. 2. The old man continues. Cold, damp. Gets in your bones. You don't feel it today. You feel it weeks later. You nod slowly. He's right. The air here shifts fast between warm and chilling, like a medieval prank. And 3. He pauses, then taps the blade's edge. Loose words. You and the apprentice exchange a look. The old man nods toward the houses. People talk, they watch, they remember. Say the wrong thing, and you'll find your welcome gone before sunset. You feel your pulse quicken. But you, he gestures at you with his chin. You're doing fine. You work, you listen. You don't try to impress anyone. Good. You exhale. He leans back, folding his hands. Remember, trouble travels faster than horses here, but kindness does too. You let his words settle in your mind. They feel true quietly, profoundly true. Surviving medieval Europe isn't just about your muscles or your coin pouch. It's about fitting in with nuance, moving gently, speaking carefully, respecting the fragile threads that hold a small community together. The apprentice nudges you. Come on, before we get recruited into more advice. You continue your walk. Ahead, a group of children chase each other around an old cart, laughing and shrieking with wild joy. One of them is holding a stick like a sword. Another is wearing a bucket as a helmet. The third is trying to catch the goat. The goat ignores them completely. A few older women sit nearby on stools, watching the kids play while mending clothing. You watch them thread needles with practiced motions, repairing tears and patches into fabric that has lived longer than some kings. Their hands never stop moving. One of them glances up at you. You're the traveller, she says. You brace again for judgment. Yes, you say. She examines you a moment, then nods. You walk better today, the apprentice whispers. See? Subtle danger, bad walking posture. They notice. Another woman adds. And you don't look as pale. That's good. You inhale slowly. Thank you. Eat more onions, she advises, returning to her stitching. You nod. I'll keep that in mind. The apprentice leans close and whispers, Onions solve everything around here. You believe him. As the shadows lengthen, the two of you pass the small square with the well. A few people draw water, laughing about something you can't quite hear. A man fishing a fallen hat from the water mutters something mournfully. A woman carrying a basket full of carrots walks by and nods toward you. Roof looks good, she says. Your chest warms. Unexpectedly. Medieval compliments are rare, and you seem to be collecting them. As you near the workshop again, something slips into place quietly, naturally. You walk the long way around town. You talk to neighbours. You were recognized. You were accepted. You weren't seen as a threat. You didn't stumble into trouble. You navigated the subtle dangers, the true dangers, without even fully realizing it. Just as you step into the yard, the goat trots ahead of you and turns around as if to say, "Not bad." For a beginner, you wipe the sweat from your brow. You're alive. You're learning. You're understanding the invisible rules that keep you safe. And tomorrow, there will be more rules, more people, more dangers. But for now, you've passed another quiet test of medieval survival. You return to the workshop yard just as a shift ripples through the air, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The warmth of the afternoon dips ever so slightly. A breeze stiffens. The sunlight grows hazier, as if retreating behind a thin curtain. Even the goat pauses mid-step, glancing upward like it senses something brewing. The apprentice stops too. Uh-oh. You look at him. Uh-oh. He tilts his head, assessing the horizon with the seriousness of an amateur astronomer. The weather's turning. Indeed, a faint grey haze begins to thicken along the sky's edge. It crawls inward like ink spreading through parchment. Walden emerges from the workshop, wiping his hands on his apron. He follows your gaze skyward and grunts. Storm coming. You blink. Already? It was clear this morning. Walden snorts. The weather doesn't ask our permission. You try to gauge the tone. Is this a joke or a profound medieval proverb? Hard to tell. The apprentice steps toward the workshop entrance. We should cover the wood. Walden nods. And the tools. And bring the dry planks inside. And make sure the goat doesn't eat anything. The goat bleats, defensively. You spend the next quarter hour in a flurry of movement, hauling boards, stacking planks, sweeping sawdust, tying down coverings. Medieval storm preparation, you quickly learn, is very hands-on, very urgent, and everyone will regret it if we get this wrong. By the time you finish tying the last rope, the breeze has become a steady wind. The sky darkens further, taking on the color of old pewter. Leaves spiral across the yard. A chicken sprints by, with the frantic speed of someone who knows it is far too small to face atmospheric events. Walden claps his hands together. That's enough. Go home before the rain starts. Home. The word catches you off guard. It shouldn't. You do have a place to sleep. A roof you helped fix. A room with a wool blanket and lavender-scented water. But hearing someone call it home out loud stirs something soft in your chest. The apprentice elbows you lightly. Come on. If we don't leave now, we'll get drenched. You nod, shouldering your cloak more tightly. But before stepping out of the yard, you hear a familiar bleat. The goat stands beside you, squinting up at the sky, as though evaluating whether this storm meets its personal standards. You're coming too? You ask. The goat gives you a look that loosely translates to, obviously. The three of you, human, apprentice, and goat, begin the walk back toward Marta's house. As you move through the streets, you notice something different. The town shifts around the weather. Vendors pull in their goods. Laundry is snatched from ropes. Doors close. Windows shutter. The energy becomes brisk, purposeful. Like a quiet drill the town has practiced hundreds of times. A woman carrying a basket of herbs passes you quickly, muttering, "Storms early this season." A man hauling firewood calls out to a neighbor, "Cover your thatch. The last wind tore half of it loose." Somewhere, a dog howls anxiously. Medieval storms aren't. Inconveniences, they're threats. They seep through thatched roofs. They rot beams. They ruin food stores. They soak bedding. They chill bones. People here respect weather with the seriousness of someone who has lived through its worst moods. And as you cross the small square with the well, a cool raindrop hits your cheek. The apprentice looks up. "We should hurry." You pick up your pace. The wind sharpens. More raindrops fall slow at first, each one tapping like a small announcement. Prepare, prepare, prepare. By the time you turn onto Marta's street, the rain becomes steady, though still gentle. The house looks warm and welcoming, lantern flickering faintly through the window. Marta herself is outside, securing her herb racks, battling the wind with the determination of someone who refuses to lose a single sprig of time. "You're just in time," she calls. "Help me with this." You rush to her side, holding down the wooden frame while she ties the ropes with practiced efficiency. The rain picks up. The wind kicks harder. The goat takes shelter under the overhang like it pays rent. When the last knot is tied, Marta gestures toward the door. Inside, all of you. You follow her in, dripping slightly but grateful. The house feels instantly warmer. A fire crackles in the hearth. The air smells of stew, herbs, and dry wood. Outside, the storm grows louder, rain hammering the roof, wind brushing against the walls, making them creak. Marta inspects the ceiling carefully. Roof's holding, she says, nodding once. You glow with quiet pride. She gestures toward the hearth. Sit. Dry yourselves. You, the apprentice, and even the goat gather near the fire. The warmth seeps into your cold hands, soothing the ache in your joints. The flames flicker gold and orange, dancing against the darkening storm outside. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Marta glances at you. You're learning the town. You nod. Slowly. She smirks. Slow is better. People trust slow. The apprentice adds. And you haven't said anything foolish yet. Yet? You repeat. He shrugs. Everyone says something foolish eventually. It's practically a tradition. Marta stirs the pot hanging over the fire. There's stew if you're hungry. You are. Intensely. She ladles out 3 bowls, one for you, one for the apprentice, and one she places on the floor for the goat, who laps it up with unearned entitlement. As you eat, the storm outside deepens, shifting into a steady roar. Thunder rumbles softly in the distance, like a giant rolling over in its sleep. The house creaks, but holds firm. Marta checks the roof again, nodding with satisfaction. The apprentice leans toward you. Storms like this come and go fast, but they remind us. Of what? You ask. He gestures around him. That we're small. That we need each other. That a good roof and a warm fire matter more than anything, Marta adds, without looking up. And that weather has the final say. Your obscure tidbit of the day arrives in her next sentence. Old folks used to say storms carry messages, omens. Animals sense it, plants sense it. People pretend they don't. You glance at the goat. It looks back knowingly. You take another spoonful of stew, hot, rich, grounding. The fire crackles, the storm rages. But inside this house, with these people, and this goat, everything feels safe. And then, as lightning flashes faintly behind the shutters, Marta adds, Historians still debate whether storms truly foretold anything. But I say this, those who pay attention survive. You let the words sink in. The storm may be loud, wild, unpredictable. But inside this little house, you're learning something ancient, something unspoken. In medieval Europe, survival isn't about strength. It isn't about courage. It's about noticing the weather, noticing the people, noticing the silence between things, and, as you sit beside the fire, wrapped in warmth while rain drums above, you know you're getting better at it. The storm fades slowly, drifting away like a tired giant, muttering to itself. By dawn, the world has quieted again, leaving behind a landscape softened by rain and washed in pale silver morning light. You wake to the faint crackle of coals in the hearth and the smell of wet earth lingering in the air. Outside the shutters, birds call cautiously as if checking whether the storm really ended or merely paused to breathe. The house creaks comfortably, its roof still intact, thanks to yesterday's work. Marta is already up, of course. She moves through the kitchen with purposeful grace, grinding something with a stone mortar. When she sees you, she nods once. You slept through the thunder. I was tired, you admit. She snorts. Good. Means you're doing something. You rinse your face with cool water from the basin and step outside into air that feels freshly minted. The ground is soft and spongy, puddles reflecting the early morning sky like small, uncertain mirrors. The goat stands near the fence, its coat slightly damp, but its expression very smug, probably because it spent the storm indoors while you nearly slipped on 3 separate floorboards during the night. The apprentice meets you on the path. Morning. Storm left a mess. He says this cheerfully, as though messes are exciting adventures. You follow him through the town, noting how the storm has changed everything just slightly. The streets are muddier, the air cooler, the colors deeper. Smoke from breakfast fires rises lazily into the sky. Villagers emerge like cautious birds, stepping around puddles and assessing damage. You pass two men inspecting a broken fence post. One more storm like that, one mutters, and the whole thing will lean like old Tom's spine. The other nods solemnly. At least Tom doesn't have goats trying to escape. You resist the urge to comment. A woman shakes a wet rug out her doorway, muttering about rain spirits. Nearby, children splash joyfully in puddles, while their mothers shout warnings not to track mud inside. It feels like the whole town is waking not just from sleep, but from something larger, a lesson, perhaps, that nature still holds the upper hand. You reach the workshop, where Walden is already outside, arms crossed, inspecting the aftermath. Roof held, he says. Good. The apprentice nudges you. He means you did good. You smile quietly. Walden grunts. Don't get proud. Still work to do. He points to the yard where bits of wood have shifted. Tools lie scattered, and one unfortunate plank has soaked up enough water to become a medieval sponge. You and the apprentice get to work lifting, sorting, drying, rearranging. It's simpler labour than yesterday, but your muscles protest with small, vengeful whispers. Still, the rhythm is familiar now. Comforting, even. Once the yard is restored to something resembling order, Walden steps back and nods. Good. Now go into town. See. Who needs help? You blink. What do you mean? Walden raises an eyebrow. Storm after a storm. People need hands. So go. A pause. You're useful enough. The apprentice grins broadly. We're doing neighbour rounds. Is that a thing? You ask. Oh yes, he says. In a small town, you help each other. Otherwise nothing gets done. You feel a warmth in your chest at the simplicity and the truth of it. So you follow him into the streets, muddy boots squelching with every step. The first neighbour in need is an elderly woman whose thatch roof has dipped in one spot. You help her lift the sagging section, while the apprentice stuffs dry straw beneath it and secures the frame. She thanks you with a piece of dried apple, tough, chewy, but sweet. The second task is helping a young couple shovel mud away from their doorway. The apprentice offers advice they don't ask for. You offer silent assistance. By the time you're done, your arms ache again, and your boots have gained 2 pounds of mud. The third neighbour is a man grimly staring at his small flooded storage shed. Take what you can, he says sadly. The rest is lost. Your heart sinks for him, but the apprentice claps him on the shoulder. Not lost, just wet. We'll dry it. What? The man says. Dry it, the apprentice repeats, as if it's the most obvious idea in the world. You help drag baskets, cloths, and wooden items out into the sun. The man watches slowly, hope returning to his face. You feel it too, a quiet satisfaction in doing something simple, small, and unmistakably helpful. Your obscure tidbit arrives here, courtesy of the man's wife. Lay cloth out in the morning sun, she says. Old habit. They say sunlight chases away sickness. You have absolutely no objection to that belief. By midday, you've helped patch a fence, retrieve a stuck bucket from a muddy ditch, and reassure a worried mother that yes, storms always sound. Bigger at night, but no, the sky is not falling. The town seems freshly alive, with conversation, storm stories, roof complaints, dramatic retellings of lightning flashes that definitely were not that bright when they happened. Gossip moves quickly. The roof on the mill almost flew off. Did you hear the wind? It sang. My cousin swears she saw a spirit in the trees. No, just a white goat. You stiffen slightly. The apprentice looks at you. Don't worry. Lots of goats look alike. You glance behind you. Your goat stares from a puddle. No, definitely not lots of goats, just one. By afternoon, the sun grows brighter, warming the ground enough to dry your boots a little. Villagers begin returning to routine tending gardens, preparing meals, sweeping porches. The storm has passed, leaving behind the low hum of collective resilience. When you and the apprentice begin your walk back toward the workshop, he stops you abruptly. Wait. You turn. He points at your feet. Step there, not there. You look closely. One patch of ground looks perfectly normal, while the other is slightly darker, muddier. You raise a brow. Why? He gestures to the darker patch. That one swallows feet. You blink. What? Try it, he dares. You step lightly onto the edge. Your foot sinks 3 inches instantly. Your entire life flashes briefly before your eyes. The apprentice laughs. Told you. You free your boot with a heroic tug and sigh deeply. Another danger, you say? Not the worst, he replies. Just messy. You continue walking slowly, carefully, with new respect for deceptively innocent mud. By the time you reach Martha's Street, the air smells of wood smoke and stew. The town hums with a calm post-storm unity, a sense of shared effort, shared repair, shared survival. And then you notice something odd. The goat is walking ahead of you, not beside you, not behind you, leading, as if it knows the way, as if it always has. You sigh. Are you guiding me home now? The goat bleats. You don't know what that means, but you follow anyway. Because in medieval Europe, everyone, absolutely everyone knows one thing. If a creature survives, the storms, and the mud, and the roofs, and the gossip, you listen to it. The sun lowers into a warm, peach-coloured haze as you follow the goat back toward Martha's house. The storm-washed streets gleam softly, puddles reflecting rooftops, sky, and the occasional curious passer-by. Smoke curls upward from dozens of hearths now, drifting lazily in the settling air. The day is easing toward evening again, calm, familiar, safe. Or so you think. You round the corner to Martha's house, expecting the usual scene of herbs drying on lines, and the faint scent of stew drifting from the window. And yes, the herbs are there. The stew is there. But something else is too. A horse. A sleek, well-kept horse, its coat gleaming even after the storm. And beside it, a man, in deep green wool, trimmed cloak, leather satchel, and an expression that suggests he has never once lost an argument. The apprentice stiffens beside you. Oh. You glance at him. What? That's the Lord Steward. Your stomach drops. Is that bad? You whisper. It's not good, he whispers back. Stewards don't visit unless there's business, or taxes, or complaints, or accusations, or, okay, you cut in. Enough. Martha stands in her doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight but calm. The steward speaks with her in low, authoritative tones. Martha's expression remains unreadable, but her stance unyielding, solid, says she is not easily intimidated. You stay back, unsure whether stepping forward makes you look respectful or suspicious. The goat, of course, walks straight toward the steward like it owns the place. The steward looks down at it with faint disgust. Is this creature yours? Before you can respond, the goat bleats, loudly, accusatorily in your direction. You raise your hands. It's not mine, Martha cuts in sharply. The goat belongs to no one. The steward sniffs, as though this answers absolutely nothing. He turns his attention back to Martha, but then, almost inevitably, his gaze lands on you. You, he says. Your pulse skips. Yes, you answer carefully. You are the traveller staying here. It's not a question. More like a verbal pin thrust straight through your existence, fixing you in place. Yes, you say. He studies you for a long moment, taking in your cloak, your posture, the faint mud stains, the sawdust traces still clinging to your sleeves. His expression is unreadable, neither hostile nor friendly, just calculating. Martha steps slightly into his line of sight. They work. They pay. They cause no trouble. The steward says, tilting his head. So I've heard. You're not sure if that's good or very bad. He opens his satchel and removes a thin strip of wood, a tally stick, much like the one used yesterday, but carved with elegant notches and the Lord's crest. He glances between you and Martha. There was a storm last night, he says. Yes, Martha replies evenly. And the south path washed out. She nods. It does that. And someone, he continues, repaired your roof. Your heart thumps in your ribs. Martha's expression doesn't shift. Yes. The steward's eyes return to you. You. Another pin strikes. Yes, you say softly. The steward examines you again, this time with sharper eyes. Not unkind, just precise. You feel like a ledger being checked. You work with Walden, he says. Yes. Hard work? Aye. Try. The apprentice steps forward, braver than you feel. They're good. Better than me with the hoops. Walden would deny this, but it helps. The steward nods slowly. You are not idle. You are not vagrant. You are not causing trouble. He snaps, the tally stick closed with a decisive click. Good. You release a breath you didn't know you were holding. He continues. The Lord expects travelers to contribute. Work, taxes, or goods. You work, so you are permitted to stay. Your shoulders relax slightly. The goat bleats in triumph. But the steward isn't finished. He steps closer, just enough that you feel the full weight of his official presence. But understand this, he says quietly. Storms bring more than rain. They uncover things, problems, wanderers, secrets. He holds your gaze. Be where you say you will be. Work where you say you will work. And keep no strange business. You nod quickly. Of course. Good. He turns to Marta. Your roof is sound now. Yes, she says simply. Good work, he adds, directed at you. You blink. Did the Lord Steward compliment you? Before you can process this, he swings himself onto his horse with practiced ease. The Lord rides tomorrow. Things must be in order. And with that, he trots off. The horse's hooves quiet on the damp road. The moment he disappears around the bend, the apprentice lets out a long, dramatic exhale. I thought he was going to accuse you of witchcraft, he whispers. You blink. Why would he? You're new, he explains. And goats follow you. You open your mouth, then close it again. Marta steps inside, muttering something about pompous men and their tall horses, then pokes her head back out. You, she says, pointing at you. Don't dwell on it. You're fine. You nod. Good. She disappears again. Wash your hands before supper. You turn to the apprentice. Was that normal? Normal for a steward, he says. Which is to say, terrifying. The goat nudges your leg approvingly. You find your voice. Why did he come? The apprentice shrugs. Storm damage. Traveller roll call. Whatever the Lord wants. But you're safe. That's what matters. You inhale the cool post-storm air, letting the tension ease from your shoulders. You're safe. For now, you walk toward the basin to wash your hands and notice a few villagers watching you with new expressions. Not suspicion, not fear, recognition, respect, even. The traveller who works, the traveller who helped fix a roof, the traveller who faced the steward without collapsing. As the last light fades and the hearth's glow calls you back indoors, the apprentice nudges your arm. Welcome, he says softly, to being noticed. The goat bleats. You sigh, and step into the next delicate layer of medieval life. Visibility, responsibility, and all the danger those bring. The evening settles softly over town, thin smoke curling from chimneys, doors closing one by one, voices fading into low murmurs behind shutters. Marta ladles out a simple stew, and you eat at her wooden table with quiet gratitude while rainwater drips from the eaves in a lazy rhythm. The apprentice joins you, and even the goat gets its share at the doorway, chewing loudly, living its best judgmental life. The storm's tension is gone. The steward's visit is fading into memory. You feel the day unwinding, a slow release of worry and work. You're halfway through your bowl when a light knock taps at the door. Not Marta's neighbours. Not someone selling wool. Not the steward again, you pray. Marta opens the door. A thin, wiry man stands there, hood pulled low, cloak damp from the storm. He carries a small burlap sack, tied tightly. His eyes dart around the room until they land directly on you. You swallow a spoonful of stew with sudden difficulty. Marta, he says in a low voice. Is this the traveller? Marta's mouth tightens in a line that suggests she didn't expect tonight to involve plot twists. They've been helping around town, she says cautiously. The man nods once, then steps inside, closing the door behind him. The apprentice leans toward you and whispers, That's Olin, the miller's brother. Always bringing trouble. Great. Olin places the burlap sack on the table. Whatever is inside shifts slightly. making a muffled clink. "I need a favor," he says. Your pulse spikes. "I don't usually ask strangers," he continues, "but storms bring problems. You look like someone who doesn't ask questions." "You absolutely do ask questions, but apparently you give off compliant energy." Marta crosses her arms. "Olin, what are you doing here?" "Nothing illegal," he says automatically, which means probably something illegal. He turns to you again. "I need someone who's not known by everyone. Someone who can walk through town without raising eyebrows. Someone who can carry something." "You guess." "Yes," he says immediately. Marta sighs deeply. The apprentice whispers, "Told you. Trouble." Olin opens the sack just enough for you to glimpse what's inside a bundle wrapped in waxed cloth. Heavy, carefully tied. "What is it?" you whisper. "Grain," Olin says. Marta snorts. "That is not grain." "It's mostly grain," he insists. The apprentice raises an eyebrow. "Is it taxed grain?" Olin purses his lips. "Technically," Marta mutters. "Not this again." Olin holds up a finger. "The storm flooded my storage shed. Half the grain is ruined. The steward's taxman comes tomorrow. If he sees the rot, he'll fine me. Maybe worse. I need to move what's left to my cousin's place beyond the north fence. Tonight, before anyone's watching." "And why can't you do it?" the apprentice asks. "Because everyone knows me," Olin says. "They see me carrying a sack at night, and they'll talk. They see a stranger," he gestures to you, "and they think nothing." You stare at him. "You want me to smuggle grain?" He thinks about it. "Not smuggle, just walk with purpose." Marta pinches the bridge of her nose. "Olin, you can't drag them into this." Olin looks desperate. "If I don't deliver clean grain tomorrow, my family goes hungry next month. The storm took everything. I didn't know where else to turn." The room falls into a heavy silence. You inhale. This is not what you expected when you arrived in medieval Europe. You expected danger, yes, but more along the lines of avoid plague rats, don't insult blacksmiths, fear geese. You did not expect economic drama delivered to your dinner table. Marta studies you with a complicated expression, protective, conflicted, resigned. Finally, she says, "It's your choice." Your stomach flips. The apprentice leans close. "It's risky," he warns. "But Olin's not a bad man. Just unlucky." The goat bleats loudly, as though offering a vote you do not understand. You look at the sack again. Heavy, suspicious, potentially ruinous. But you also see Olin's strained eyes, the mud stains on his cloak, the storm-worn look of a man on the edge. You exhale slowly. "I'll help," you say. Marta puts her hands on her hips. "Of course you will," she mutters, but there's relief behind her words. Olin's shoulders drop in gratitude. "Thank you. But," you add firmly, "I need to know the route." Olin nods. "There's a narrow path behind the cooper's yard, leads between the hedges. Follow it past the orchard, stay left at the fork, and climb the low ridge. My cousin's cottage sits just beyond. Lantern in the window." You nod. He hands you the sack. "It is heavier than you expect." Your arms sink slightly. "Keep it close," he says, "and don't stop if someone calls to you." Your pulse jumps. Why not? Because Olin hesitates. People assume the worst at night. The apprentice pats your shoulder. "Stay to the shadows. Walk like you belong." That advice is becoming your entire personality. Marta adds, "If a dog barks, toss. Hid a piece of bread." "What if I don't have bread?" She narrows her eyes. "Why don't you have bread?" You shut your mouth quickly. Olin pulls up his hood. "I'll go another way. Meet my cousin. Stay off the main road. And if anyone asks what you're carrying, don't answer. You finish." "Exactly." He slips into the night like a man made of fog. You look at the sack. You look at Marta. You look at the apprentice. You look at the goat. The goat stares at you meaningfully. Marta sighs. "Fine. Take the cloak with the thicker hood." The apprentice adds, "And the lantern with the quiet hinge." The goat adds nothing, but it follows you to the doorway, as though preparing to escort you. You whisper, "You are not coming." It bleats. You whisper more firmly, No. It bleats louder. Marta opens the door. Go. Before the wind picks up. You step out into the cool night. Sack slung over your shoulder. Heart pounding like a medieval drum. The sky. There is clearing now. Clouds drifting apart to reveal a few shy stars. The air is crisp, carrying the afterscent of rain. Behind you, the goat settles a few steps away, watching like an ominous guardian spirit. You pull your hood up and start walking, a traveller, carrying contraband grain, down a hidden path. In the dark. Welcome to medieval Europe, where helping your neighbours is noble and wildly dangerous. The night folds around you, as you step into the narrow lane behind the cooper's yard, the sack of totally innocent grain weighing heavily on your shoulder. The moon hides behind thin clouds, offering only half-hearted guidance, and the last hints of storm moisture cling to the air like a warning. Your cloak swishes softly with each step. Your boots sink quietly into damp earth. Your heartbeat seems louder than everything else. You pause once just to take one steadying breath, and the world around you changes. Sounds stretch out, shadows thicken. The entire town seems to be holding its breath. This is your first real medieval night. Not a cozy indoor night with stew and a fire. A night outside. And it's so much darker than you expected. You grip the lantern Marta gave you, careful not to let it swing. Its small flame glows weakly under the hooded cover, just enough to guide your feet but not enough to draw attention. The goat watches you from the edge of the yard, staying behind this time, finally acknowledging that this might be a solo mission. Or maybe it just doesn't like mud. You follow Olin's instructions, slipping through the hedge-lined path behind the workshop. The branches brush against your cloak, whispering in the breeze. You can smell wet bark, damp leaves, the lingering scent of fresh-cut wood. Your boots crunch quietly on gravel. Crunch, crunch. Your world shrinks to sound and shadow. You walk. Every house fades behind you, first Walden's yard, then the cluster of smaller dwellings beyond it. Soon, even the faint glow of windows disappears. Trees arch overhead, forming a tunnel that sways gently as the wind drifts through. The path narrows and widens unpredictably, as if shaped by both nature and centuries of tired feet. The sack rubs against your back with every step, heavy, shifting, not dangerous, but incriminating enough to make your pulse jump whenever a twig snaps nearby, which happens a lot. Halfway down the hidden lane, you hear something rustle in the bushes. You freeze. It rustles again. Your mind spins through a list of medieval threats. Wolves, thieves, roaming cursed chickens. A rabbit hops out. Just a rabbit. It pauses, stares at you like you've interrupted its evening, then hops away again with regal irritation. You exhale slowly. A voice echoes faintly in your head. People assume the worst at night. No kidding. You continue, moving more carefully now. The orchard appears ahead. Just as Olin said, rows of gnarled apple trees, branches dripping with unpicked fruit. The smell hits you, first sweet, tart, slightly fermented. The ground is dotted with fallen apples, some half-eaten, some squishy, all slick from the rain. You place your feet carefully, avoiding anything that looks like it might betray you to gravity. Somewhere deeper in the orchard, you hear the soft snuffle of a foraging boar. You decide not to investigate. The path forks exactly where Olin described. One side leads toward the open fields, the other slopes gently upward toward the low ridge. You take the left fork, pushing up the slope with slow, deliberate steps. Halfway up, you hear something behind you. A twig snaps. You whirl around, lantern raised just enough to illuminate. Nothing. Just shadows. Just night. Just your own racing breath. You swallow hard and turn back toward the path. But then you hear it again. Snap. Crunch. Soft steps. Someone is following you. You grip the lantern tighter. You quicken your pace. The steps quicken too. Still distant. Still soft. But unmistakably there. The path narrows between two low stone walls. You tighten your hold on the sack. Your fingers tremble slightly, but your feet keep moving. Faster. Faster. You reach the top of the ridge, heart pounding, breath sharp. Below you, you can finally see it. A small cottage with a lantern glowing gently in the window. Olin's cousin's home. a promise of safety. You hurry down the slope, careful but not slow. The steps behind you fade, then return, then fade again. Whoever is following you is keeping distance, watching, tracking, not attacking. That somehow feels worse. When you reach the cottage gate, a man steps into view, a stocky figure with a stern brow and arms that suggest he wrestles grain sacks for fun. "Traveller?" he asks. You nod, breathless. "Olin sent me." He takes in your appearance, mud-splattered, wide-eyed, clutching an unquestionably suspicious sack. Then he nods once and opens the gate. You made good time. You step inside gratefully. Behind you, the path disappears into darkness. The cousin gestures to a small shed near the cottage. Quick, inside. Before anyone sees. You slip in, place the sack on the wooden table, and breathe for the first time in what feels like hours. He unties the knot, checks the contents, and exhales. Not ruined. The storm spared something after all. Relief ripples through you, soft, warm, real. "Thank you," he says. "Olin said you were trustworthy." You blink. Trustworthy. You've been called many things in this century. Lost, pale, probably doomed, but trustworthy is new. He closes the sack, stashes it under a dry shelf, and nods again. "Follow me back down the road. Safer that way." You hesitate. "I think someone followed me." He narrows his eyes. "Show me." You both step outside. The wind moves through the grass. Shadows shift. The ridge is quiet. Too quiet. He walks a few steps up the slope, scanning the road. Then he stops. "Tracks," he says. Your stomach tightens. "Human?" you ask. He crouches. "Yes." Light steps. Careful steps. He rises. "Someone was watching." You swallow. "Not thieves," he says. Too cautious. More like a villager who didn't want to be seen. You feel a chill slide down your spine. "Should we worry?" you ask. He studies the dark path for a moment before shaking his head. "Not tonight," he says. "But be careful. People talk. People watch." His voice softens. "Nights hide things daylight doesn't want." You don't know whether that's comforting or terrifying. Probably both. He escorts you back as far as the orchard, then nods. "Go home safe." You thank him and turn toward the town. The walk back is quieter, perhaps because whoever followed you lost interest. Or perhaps because danger only comes when you're carrying a suspicious sack after a storm. The familiar rooftops come into view. Then Marta's street. Then her front door. Light spills through the cracks. The goat is waiting beside the step. Of course it is. It stands, bleats once, "Are you alive?" and trots inside ahead of you. Marta looks up from her seat by the fire. She studies your face, your cloak, your shaking hands. "You're back," she says. Your voice comes out small. "Someone followed me." The apprentice stiffens. Marta's eyes narrow not with fear, but with understanding. She motions you closer. "Sit," she says. "Start from the beginning." You sink onto the bench, heart still trembling, and she adds quietly, "In this place, night remembers everything." And you realize something has changed. Not just the path, not just the quiet, not just the grain. You. You have entered the nighttime side of medieval life, where shadows are watchers, and small acts carry large consequences. You sleep lightly that night, if you can call it sleep. It's more like drifting in and out, while every branch creak and distant dog bark reminds you of footsteps on the dark road. Your dreams blend with the memory of that unseen follower. A shifting shadow, a whisper of movement, a faint crunch behind you. When dawn finally spills weakly through Marta's shutters, you sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes. The stew-scented warmth of her home calms you, but the unease remains a quiet presence in your ribs. Marta is already at the hearth, stirring something thick and fragrant. The apprentice sits at the table, eating a heel of bread, looking at you with an expression that sits somewhere between concern and curiosity. "You look like you slept in a ditch," he says helpfully. "Feel like it too," you reply. Marta hands you a bowl, warm, oat-thickened, sprinkled with something herbal. "Eat," she says, "and then tell us." You recount the previous night, Olin, the sack, the orchard, the ridge, the footsteps, the shadow that never showed a face. Marta listens quietly, jaw clenched. shoulders tight. The apprentice listens the way a boy listens to a ghost story, wide-eyed, hungry for detail, ready to be terrified. When you finish, Marta releases a long breath. "Someone saw you," she says. You nod. "Someone followed," the apprentice adds. You nod again. Marta wipes her hands on her apron. "But they didn't confront you. That matters." "Why?" you ask. "If they wanted trouble," she says, "you'd know." The apprentice nods sagely. "You'd know very quickly." You swallow your last bite of porridge. "So what does following mean?" Marta doesn't answer immediately. Finally, she says, "Curiosity, suspicion, or someone checking whether a new stranger is trustworthy. That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be," she replies. Before you can ask more, someone knocks at the door, 3 quick taps. Familiar. Rhythm. Marta opens it. Olin steps inside, looking equal parts relieved and exhausted. When he sees you, he offers a tight, grateful smile. "You delivered it," he says. You nod. "Your cousin got it safely." He lets out a long breath he must have been holding since dawn. "Thank you. I owe you. Truly." Marta crosses her arms. Someone followed them. Olin's face goes pale. "What?" You recount the sound of footsteps, the careful tracking, the retreat. His hands tremble slightly as he listens. "They didn't confront," you emphasize. "Just watched." He sinks onto the bench. Could have been someone from the mill, or the steward's men, or some nosy. He stops himself, glancing at Marta. "Don't do anything foolish," she warns him. He nods, though you can tell his mind is racing. "The taxman checks my grain today, if he thinks something's amiss." "It'll be fine," the apprentice says weakly. Olin stands abruptly. "I need to get back." He turns to you. "If anyone asks, don't speak of this. Please." You nod. "I won't." He rushes out. The door closes behind him. Marta sighs. "Well, that's that." The apprentice stands and stretches. "It's market day. We should get going before the best onions are gone." Market day. The busiest day. The loudest day. The most eyes per square foot day. Perfect. But you need to show your face. Show normalcy. Show that you are doing as you should. So you follow the apprentice into the brightening morning. The marketplace hums with energy. After the storm, after the tension, after the long night, everyone seems eager to return to routine. Merchants set up stalls piled with root vegetables, barley sacks, loaves of fresh bread, dried fish, wooden wares, and bundles of herbs. Voices overlap. Fresh apples. 2 pennies for a spool. Best onions in the valley. No, my onions are better. People bustle. Through the square, stepping around puddles, greeting neighbors, bartering with practiced ease. But something is different. People look at you longer today. Not hostile, not fearful. Just longer. A woman selling cloth tilts her head as you pass. A pair of older men whisper and glance sideways. Even the baker pauses mid-sweep to eye you thoughtfully. You swallow. The apprentice, oblivious, waves at half the square. "Come on, let's get pickled cabbage before Marta buys it all." You trail behind, weaving through the crowd. A man carrying a crate bumps into you gently. "Oh, sorry." Then he recognizes you. "Oh, you. You blink. Me? You were out late," he says, in a tone that is neither accusatory nor friendly. Just observing. Your pulse ticks up. "I was doing a favor." He nods, not disapproving, just filing that information away in whatever mental ledger medieval villagers maintain. Long night for a traveller. He walks off before you can respond. Another voice calls softly from a nearby stall. You look tired. You turn. An elderly woman from yesterday's roof, gossip nods knowingly. "Storm nights are never kind." "True," you say. She squints. "You walked the North Ridge path, didn't you?" Your heart stops for a second. "How did you?" She waves a hand. "Mud on your boots. Ridge mud sticks different." "Of course it does." You manage a stiff nod, buy a handful of onions you don't particularly want, and quickly retreat toward the apprentice. He's examining carrots with the solemnity of a jewel appraiser. "These are good," he announces. "Very good." You lean close. "Everyone knows." "Knows what?" "That I walked the ridge," he shrugs. Everyone always knows everything. He gestures at the carrots. Try one. You do. It tastes like anxiety. As you move through the square, the glances continue short, lingering, assessing. Not harsh, not threatening, but sharp. They're connecting dots. They're filling in blanks. They're watching the newcomer who walked at night during a storm recovery. You suddenly understand the old man from section 15, the one who said, "The worst dangers are loose words, because you don't need to do anything wrong to be noticed. You just need to exist in the wrong place at the wrong time." And with that realization, your scholarly uncertainty sentence arrives naturally. Historians still debate how tightly medieval communities monitored strangers, but living here, you begin to suspect the answer is constantly. You and the apprentice finish the rest of your errands buying lentils, helping a woman pick up spilled turnips, stepping carefully around the rooster, who gives you a suspicious sideways glare. By the time you leave the square, you feel wrung out, not physically, but socially. Medieval scrutiny is a full-contact sport. The apprentice hands you a small bag of vegetables. You did fine. Did I? Yes. No one shouted at you. You suppose that's something. As you walk home, you overhear one last whisper from two neighbors sitting near a porch. That's the traveler. The one helping Marta? I heard they were out late last night. Doing what? Who knows. But Marta trusts them. Oh, good. You exhale. Maybe not all attention is bad. When you reach Marta's house, she meets you at the door, eyeing your face carefully. Well? She asks. How was the square? You answer honestly. Everyone noticed. She gives a single, measured nod. Good. Good? Yes. She steps aside to let you in. Better to be seen working in daylight than whispered about in darkness. You enter the warm, herb-scented room. The goat lifts its head from the hearth corner and bleats in greeting or judgment, probably both. You close the door. You are visible now, which means you must be careful. But also, you have begun to matter. And in medieval Europe, that can be protection or peril depending on your next steps. You spend the early afternoon helping Marta sort herbs, carefully hanging bundles of sage, mint, and lavender from the rafters, where they sway gently in the soft indoor breeze. The goat lies near the hearth like a decorative rug with opinions, occasionally lifting its head to glare at dust motes. Marta works quietly, purposefully. But you can sense it, she's listening, watching you from the corner of her perception, the way someone watches a pot they don't want to boil over. You did well in the square, she says eventually. I felt like every pair of eyes followed me. They did, she replies plainly. Better that than whispers in the blind spots. You tie off a bundle of rosemary. I just don't know what they're thinking. Marta gives a thin smile. Most of them are thinking about stew, chores, chickens, and taxes. A stranger walking at night gives them something new to talk about. That's all. You nod, though your stomach still twists at the memory of last night's unseen follower. The door creaks, and the apprentice steps inside, carrying a small bundle of firewood. You survived the market, he says brightly. Barely. He laughs and sets the wood near the hearth. Marta studies him a moment, then says, You should go help Walden unload his planks. The apprentice shuffles. He didn't ask. He never asks, Marta replies. But he needs help. The apprentice casts you a conspiratorial look, as if to say she's always right before heading back out. You continue working until the last bundle is hung. Marta ties off the string and wipes her hands. There. Enough for winter. The goat bleats approvingly. You step outside for air, letting the cool breeze brush your cheeks. The sky has begun its slow descent into evening colours, soft gold melting into smoky blue. A few children chase each other along the dime, muddy lane. Someone is mending a fishing net. Someone else is shouting at a stubborn sheep. Normal. Steady. Safe. Mostly. You take a slow walk down the lane, wanting to stretch your legs and occupy your mind. Halfway toward the square, you hear quick footsteps behind you. Not heavy, not stealthy, just urgent. You turn. The apprentice runs up, slightly out of breath. There you are. You blink. What's wrong? He glances over his shoulder, making sure no one listens. I need to tell you something. Your stomach tightens. Okay. He pulls you behind a small shed where the shadows deepen. He fidgets with his hands, rare for him. "You didn't hear this from me," he begins. "That is never a reassuring sentence. I think I know who followed you last night." Your breath catches. "Who?" He swallows. "It wasn't thieves. And not the steward's men." "Then who?" "Someone from the mill. Olin's mill." Your chest tightens. "Why?" The apprentice hesitates. "There's talk that the mill has debts. Old ones, bad ones. Some people think Olin tries too hard to avoid taxes." You rub your temples. "So they thought I was, what? Helping him?" "Yes," he says softly. "Or checking on him. Or hiding something for him." You feel a cold weight settle in your stomach. "But I wasn't." "I know," he interrupts. "And Olin knows. And Marta knows. But the town? They don't know you yet. They don't know what you'll do." He looks up at you with serious eyes. "People here are wary. They've lived through years when one bad harvest ruins families, when one missing bag of grain starts fights, when debts turn neighbors into enemies." You nod slowly, absorbing it. "This isn't suspicion of you." "Exactly. It's suspicion of circumstances." The apprentice lowers his voice further. "I followed you last night too." You tense. "You what?" He raises his hands. "Not far. Just to the orchard. I wanted to make sure you didn't walk into a ditch or get eaten by a boar." He shrugs. "Or fall into the cursed well." "There's no cursed." "There is," he says seriously. "A little cursed. Maybe moderately cursed." You stare at him. He continues. "But when I saw someone else behind you, I hid. I didn't recognize them." "Could you tell anything?" "Height? Clothing?" he thinks. "Cloak, hood, medium height, careful steps, not trying to hurt you. Just watching." "That matches exactly what you felt." He meets your gaze. "You're not in danger." You exhale shakily. "You're sure?" He nods once. "If they wanted to confront you, they would have. They just wanted to see where you went." "And now?" You ask. "Now," he says, "you need to stay visible. Work, help, eat in the square, be normal." He grins. "Which you're strangely good at." You sigh. "Strangely?" He shrugs. "Well, you do carry yourself like you're from a far-off place, where goats don't judge people." You rub your face. "That's very specific." He pats your shoulder. "Just be careful at night." "Is it always like this?" You ask. "This much watching?" He nods earnestly. "Oh yes. Small towns are like soup pots. Everyone floats into everyone else's broth." You blink. "Soup pots?" He beams proudly. "It's a metaphor. You have no idea whether it is." But then he steps closer, more serious now. "There's something else you should know." You brace. He lowers his voice to a whisper. "The steward asked about you again." Quietly. Your heart jolts. "What did he say?" "Just asked how you work, how you carry yourself, whether you speak much." He kicks a stone. He wasn't angry. Just curious. Curiosity from authority is somehow worse than suspicion. You inhale deeply. "Thank you for telling me," he nods. "You're not alone in this." You watch him jog back toward the workshop, his tunic fluttering in the wind. The sky dims further, softening into evening. You step back toward Marta's house, mind turning over every detail. The follower, the steward, the whispered talk, the fragile trust you're slowly earning. When you reach the front path, something moves beside the herb garden. You jump. The goat emerges from behind a rosemary bush. You sigh in relief. "Oh, it's you." It stares at you, slowly, meaningfully, almost knowingly. You kneel beside it. What do you want?" The goat blinks, then nudges your knee gently. Not aggressively, not mockingly, just nudging. For a moment, it feels like understanding. A strange, soft clarity settles over you. The goat hasn't been judging you. Not really. It's been watching you the way the town watches, the way Marta watches, the way the apprentice watches. Not out of suspicion, but out of calculation, assessment, recognition. In a place where strangers can shift the balance, animals and people alike keep their eyes open. You rest a hand on its back. I get it now, you whisper. The goat closes its eyes briefly as if satisfied. Marta opens the door behind you. Supper, she calls, and hurry before it goes cold. You stand, follow her inside, and glance once more at the goat. It settles itself near the doorstep like a sentry, and for the first time since arriving here, you feel protected. Evening drapes itself across the town in long, soft strokes of blue and rose, settling into the corners of houses and the cracks between stones. Gentle smoke floats up from hearths, curling into the fading sky like tired thoughts drifting towards sleep. The storm's memory is gone, replaced by a warmth that settles into the bones of everything. You step outside Marta's house after supper, letting the cool evening air wrap around you like a cloak. Lanterns glow faintly in windows. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs a warm end-of-day laugh. Children's voices drift as they're called indoors. Cooking scents fade slowly into the night. The apprentice approaches from down the lane, waving both arms as though guiding an invisible parade. There you are, he says. Walden says he might need you tomorrow. Something about barrel hoops. You chuckle. Glad to be useful. He grins. You're more than useful. You're basically, well, not yet a villager, but getting there. You walk with him toward the small square. The puddles from the storm have shrunk, leaving behind only damp earth and the shimmering memory of last night. The sky above is streaked with thin clouds that catch the last traces of sunlight like brushed gold. The apprentice kicks a pebble. Busy day, he mutters. Storm repairs, market gossip, mysterious night follower. That's at least 3 days' worth of excitement. You forgot the goat, you say. He glances over his shoulder. No, I didn't. It's behind us. You turn. Yes, the goat is indeed behind, walking casually, as though this is a normal evening stroll. You sigh. It never stops, does it? Nope, the apprentice says cheerfully. Medieval Europe is mostly chores and livestock staring at you. As you reach the square, several villagers nod in your direction. Small acknowledgements, almost friendly. A woman selling herbs raises a hand. A fisherman sharpening a hook gives a grunt of approval. Even Torben nods solemnly, though he immediately glares toward a distant rooster. Acceptance. Quiet, understated, fragile acceptance. You never thought it would feel this heavy or this gentle. The apprentice stops beside the well and sits on the low stone wall. You'll be all right, he says softly. People were curious. They're still curious, but they're not scared of you anymore. You sit beside him. That's good. It is, he says. Strangers can change things. And people don't always like change. But they like you. You blink. They do. Well, he says, most do. Enough do. You look around the square with new eyes, seeing not just buildings, but stories. People who let you in. People who watched you. People who judged you. And people who, slowly, cautiously, began trusting you. The apprentice nudges your arm. Want to see something? You nod, and he leads you down a path behind the square, toward a small rise above town. The goat follows, of course, because the goat follows all meaningful events. You climb the rise and reach a grassy slope overlooking the whole settlement. Lanterns shimmer below like warm fireflies trapped in wooden frames. Smoke rises in thin threads. The fields spread into the dark. The sky opens wide. The apprentice sits cross-legged. I came here a lot when I was little, he says, when things scared me, when I wanted to see the whole world at once. You sit beside him. Is it safer here, you ask? He shrugs. Not safer, just easier to see where you belong. You let the words sink in. You've carried water. You've repaired a roof. You've walked the night road. You've faced the steward. You've been watched. You've been trusted. You've survived. The apprentice lies back in the grass and sighs deeply. Long day. You should rest soon. You nod. He stands, brushing dirt from his tunic, and begins to walk back toward town. Come on, he says. Let's head back before Marta starts wondering whether you've fallen into the well. You look once more at the lantern-lit town below. It looks small from up here, small but whole, living, breathing. A place that has woven a thin thread around you. You follow the apprentice. The goat follows you. And as you return to Marta's warm doorway, passing into the soft glow of the firelit room, you realize you've made it through another day. A hard day. A strange day. But a day that ended with trust. And in medieval Europe, trust is the only currency more valuable than bread. You step inside, close the door, and let the night finish, settling gently over everything. The night deepens outside Marta's home, slipping softly across the rooftops like a long, dark velvet blanket being drawn gently over the town. The world dims in slow motion. Lantern lights flicker lower, voices fall to whispers, doors thud quietly as families settle into their own small pockets of warmth. Inside, the hearth glows with the last steady breaths of the fire. The light is golden and sleepy, stretching across the wooden floor in soft, uneven lines. You feel the warmth brush against your skin, gentle as a hand smoothing a blanket. The quiet settles around you like an old friend pulling up a chair. Your muscles soften one by one. First, your hands, still marked from climbing roofs and carrying water. Then your shoulders, finally releasing the day's weight. Then your breath, long and slow, sinking into a comfortable rhythm. The goat curls beside the hearth, sighing in a way that feels almost human. The apprentice is already gone, back to his own home, probably falling asleep mid-sentence. Marta moves quietly through the room, extinguishing candles with practiced, gentle motions. Each one dims the room a little more, until the world is held only by firelight and breath. Outside, the wind softens into a slow, steady hum. The trees murmur softly, swaying in rhythms older than the town itself. Somewhere distant, an owl calls once soft, rounded, unhurried. The ground still carries the cool memory of yesterday's storm, but inside, the warmth holds steady. You lie down on the straw-stuffed mattress, pulling the wool blanket to your chin. It smells faintly of herbs, lavender, sage, a hint of rosemary woven through the fabric by Marta's careful hands. The scent is grounding, comforting, a quiet reminder that you are safe for the night. Safe in a world that doesn't know you came from somewhere else. Safe among people who watched you, questioned you, and slowly learned to trust you. Your eyes grow heavy. Your thoughts drift like slow-moving clouds. The fire crackles one last time, then sighs into embers. And as sleep begins to pull you gently under, the world becomes soft. Softer than straw, softer than smoke, soft as a warm breath in a quiet room. Here, in this small corner of medieval Europe, with the town resting, the hearth glowing, and the night settling peacefully beyond the shutters, you drift slowly, quietly, calmly into rest.